Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Today, the Defense Department, thanks to very hard work by Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, as well as his team working in concert with the Office of Management and Budget. Today, the department is submitting to Congress our plan for finally closing the facility at Guantanamo once and for all. It's a plan that reflects the hard work of my entire national security team. So I especially want to thank Ash and his team at DOD. This plan has my full support. It reflects our best thinking on how to best go after terrorists and deal with those who we may capture.
Sociopath has done it again. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Bobby. Go have a J and leave me alone. So he thanks Ash Carter, who was very busy putting transgenders into the Marines and into all aspects of the military. That's, of course, the most important product now in the military, is putting diversity above national security. And then, of course, the psychopath in between golf rounds made sure last night that we were all shocked learning that immigrants with HIV and STDs would now be welcome to America. They decided to let immies with 3 sexually transmitted diseases known for causing sores or lesions on genitalia to enter the once great United States. This was expanded by the psychopath in the White House through his wholly owned subsidiary, the Department of Health and Human Services. They now open the borders to those with STDs. They said that the communicable diseases known as AIDS and other STDs are not a threat to the United States. Now, as you know, the psycho has broken the budget. The psychopath has broken the budget on every level. Do you know what this is going to cost you? Do you know what it's going to cost to welcome in aliens with these STDs? Do you know how many hundreds of millions of dollars a year this is going to cost us? That's not even talking about the disease they're going to spread in the country. So now we wake up and you ask yourself, what is this maniac's motive for closing Gitmo? What's his vendetta? What's he really after? What is he after? I am questioning you, the audience of the Savage Nation, the brightest audience in talk radio history, to come up with your ideas of why he wants to close Guantanamo Bay. In plain English, Guantanamo Bay is part of the island of Cuba. It is our devil's island. It has been our devil's island for a long time. It's been used to house the worst people on the planet. People who, if found guilty, and by the way, if they're not guilty, what are they doing in Guantanamo to begin with? They're put there because they're guilty. If they're so guilty of consorting with terrorists or plotting terrorism, why have they not been executed to begin with? Why don't you just line them up in front of a firing squad and give it back to Castro? Now, the question is, why does he want so badly to bring these arch terrorists to the United States of America? He wants to bring them on our soil. This is the whole crux of the issue here. He's not just closing down Guantanamo Bay Prison, which is on the island of Cuba, but he wants to bring the world's worst terrorists to America, to house them in prisons that we have here, whether it be Florence or Fort Leavenworth, now housing Marines who did their job too well. Yeah, Leavenworth now has some of our Marines who killed too many Iraqis while fighting for their lives and the lives of Americans. If they did their job a little too well, they're rotting in Fort Leavenworth. I've helped get some of them started in their life after they were let out by raising money for them. Now, why does the psychopath or the sociopath in the White House have such a desire in the waning months of his mad reign of terror to do this to us? He's gotten everything else he wants. Let's go down the punch list of Barry Obama. Let's turn the clock back to when this unknown fraud was foisted upon the American people. And let's go down the punch list and see what he's gotten and what he's got left to do. Let's see. Amnesty for illegal aliens, check. There's a fundamental amnesty right now. He broke the border with Mexico. We're bleeding, and they're bleeding in their undesirables. That's right. Who do you think is coming in from these countries? The most desirable citizens? I don't see Carlos Slim trying to emigrate to America, do you? Do you see any Mexicans who are worth any property trying to come to America? No. So who was coming in here? The most undesirable citizens of these countries are pouring into this country. I know it's harsh. I know it hurts. It's like a gut punch. But analyze what I just said to you. So now he wants to bring in, on top of that, immigrants with HIV and STDs into America. So now he's done that. Punch the list. Let's go down the punch list. Obama's mad punch list. Amnesty for illegal aliens. Check that off because it's happened already. It doesn't matter whether or not it's been rubber stamped by the stooges in Congress. We have that. Let's see, gays in the military. Oh, that's an old one. Check that one off. Let's see, gay marriage. Oh, check that one off. Let's see, what else hasn't he achieved yet? Printing as much money as he wants without going to jail for being fundamentally a counterfeiter. Check that one off. He's taking control of the Treasury, which is not his job, by the way. He's not even in his job category. He has fundamentally become a counterfeiter. The world's greatest counterfeiter in the world's history is Barack Obama. No one's ever said that before. You haven't heard it on another show. So I know it's shocking to hear, but he's basically acting like a counterfeiter. He is printing our currency ad libitum as often as he wishes. Let's go down the punch list. What else has he done? Let's see. Oh, well, there's a recent one. A justice died under suspicious circumstances. He's now chuckling that he's going to replace the judge. He's bypassing Congress in his own mind already. God only knows what he's threatening them with in Congress. Replacing the judges. What else? Let's see what else he's done. Can anyone name anything on Obama's punch list that he has not achieved during his reign of madness? I can. There's a few things left. He has not gotten rid of the Second Amendment. He has not gotten around the Second Amendment. He has not figured out a way to take guns out of your cold, dying hands. So that's one big one. But you know, there's a lot of time left. Look what Bush did in the last months of his reign of terror. Bush bankrupted America. Bush busted out the economy in order to feed his friends who did this to us, in order to pay back his contributors, in my estimation. He busted the economy. I had called him a fiscal socialist in the August of that year, and I'll take credit for that. I was 1,000% right. That's right. You keep saying, oh, wow, they want socialism in America. We must fight it at all turns. Bush was a fiscal socialist. What are you doing? You have to check it up in a book? You have to read it on a conservative website to see if it was said before? It was said before by me in 2007. I said Bush is a fiscal socialist. So you already have socialism, by and large, maybe to the 70th percentile. Medicare, Medicaid, EPA, you name all of the alphabet agencies of the federal government, what do you think they are? Socialism, my friends, an overbearingly top-heavy, centralized government. So don't sit there and think you're living in a free society, in a capitalist society. So let's see. He has not yet been spying on Americans without going to prison. Check that one off. Let's see. Using all of the police agencies that he has under his power, not to really fight terror, but to fight the American patriots. Check that one off. Let's see. Seizing federal land and killing people with impunity. Check that one off. Let's go down the list. What has the madman, the psychopath, the sociopath, the imposter not yet checked off on his checklist when there's only a few things left? Let's see. Allowing illegal aliens to vote in America, thereby rendering our votes meaningless. That's already happened. He has fought every voter ID law successfully. There's been no pushback. So let's see, what hasn't he done yet? Let's see now. Close Guantanamo and bring the terrorists to America. Now, why? Take away your right to bear arms. Well, that you know why. So he can have the exact power that Castro has over his people. Turn them into slaves, in essence. Frightened little slaves. So he's got a few things left on his little punch list as he goes out the door and goes on to better things. One of them is Guantanamo. And you have to ask yourself why it's so important to him. I question the level of importance is the whole issue of today's program, at least in this first hour. Why is Barry Obama so crazy to close Guantanamo and to get these terrorists onto our shores? Why? And to go back to the opening statement, the reason they're on Guantanamo, which is our devil's island, is because they're devils. And devils need to be dealt with the way devils should be dealt with. If they are innocent If they are innocent, they should be freed. If they are guilty as charged, they should be executed for having committed crimes against our nation during wartime. Why are they bringing him here? Why does he want immigrants with HIV and STDs welcome into the United States of America? Why is he not stopping the Zika virus by banning all travel to and from the nations where the Zika virus is raging? Why? Tell me why. Why is he letting a record number of children from Central America flood into this country? Every one of them will become a burden upon the American taxpayer. Why is he going to use executive action to close Guantanamo and bring these detainees into the United States of America? How many Guantanamo inmates who have been freed have gone back to fight against America? What percentage of them are recidivists? It's a big word. I know it's a tough word for liberals. Recidivists. You won't hear that on the campaign trail because most of the candidates talk in 2 or 3 syllables. Boys and girls, I will make America great again. I will make America hate again. Take your choice. One from column A or one from column B. That's the opening to the show. Now, yesterday, I don't know whether I hit a new high water, but I didn't have one caller in 3 hours. I started out slow, and like a good symphony, I ended at a very quick pace. Today is going to be different. I'm going to take a lot of calls. Yesterday was a no-caller day. People didn't even understand it. They said, oh, Savage didn't have any calls. No, I had jammed lines the whole time. But I didn't get to them because my mind was flowing. It was flowing with ideas. I was inspired all day long. I wanted to speak with you, my loyal audience. I treat each day on radio as though it is my last. It is one of the greatest gifts to have in radio, by the way, is to not sit there thinking that you're going to be on the air forever because only God has that power. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? I visited a friend last night who was 87 years of age, who's very sick. He fell off a motor vehicle, let's say a 2-wheel motor vehicle. I had told him for years to stop riding the motor vehicle. I said, stop it, you're going to get killed one day. Well, a few months ago, his motor scooter fell over and it fell on him and he broke ribs. I said, stop it, you're going to die. Now, he's a man of means. He's a wonderful person. He's given so much to the world. I would consider him my best friend. I have about 1 or 2 friends in the whole world, which I consider to be very lucky. Outside of my family, I have 2 friends. Truthfully, he's one of the 2. And I visited him last night, and I didn't know what to do to help him. I told him about certain vitamins and stuff that could help his healing go faster the doctors knew nothing about. And initially, for a week or so, he was following my advice, and his spirits had gone up. And then one of the quacks probably talked to him and cut the dose down, and he wasn't feeling well last night. And I explained to him the way I explain in Diseases Without Borders how what proper dose to take, particularly in this case of ascorbic acid. Vitamin C. Said, oh, I didn't know that. I said, yes, a flat teaspoonful is 4 grams. Well, he had cut it back to 1.5 grams, and his spirits had gone down. I said, John, vitamin C crosses the blood-brain barrier faster than heroin. The molecule is that small. It's one of the greatest mood enhancers in the world. Now, most of you take powder, don't take powdered C, you take pills. They're worthless. Most vitamin C pills are dead. You may as well be taking straw. I tried to explain that to him. So he got the powder and he took it. I'll get back to the main theme of the story. I had gone over the bridge to see him. This goes right back to Guantanamo. Again, the red light came up. See, I could go on now like a filibuster for 5 straight hours. I feel it again. I'm feeling the spirit. I don't know what it is. I'm on some kind of new vitamins or something. I'm feeling the spirit again. But I promise you, we will get to the callers right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth and financial future. Call 1-800-289-2640. I'll finish up the story and get back to my main question, which is, should we close Guantanamo Bay Prison or not? I said Gitmo is our devil's island. If any of them are innocent, release them. If they're guilty, execute them by firing squad and give Guantanamo Bay back to the Castro criminal regime. But I want to go back to my story about visiting my sick friend last night. I drove over the bridge. Sometimes I work in a county north of San Francisco. I drove in. I was going to have dinner. It was a beautiful night. Visited my friend. I didn't feel good after visiting with him because I realized how fleeting life is the whole point. He is, I would say is, because he's still with us, one of the most dynamic people I've ever met in my whole life. He has given away fortunes to hospitals and charities around the world. He's a wonderful man. I wanted to take his motor scooter away from him. I wanted to throw it into a river months ago. I had an instinct to throw his keys away. He wouldn't listen to anybody. He once said to me, I'd rather die on the motor scooter than be imprisoned. The guy could afford 18 chauffeurs a minute. He doesn't want them. He's a free spirit. So he had this accident. Some idiot woman crashed into him. So I looked at him, and I said to myself, tomorrow that's you. I could fall off a bicycle, right? An airplane could fall out of the sky that I'm on. I could go to a resort and wind up with a pillow over my head. I could eat a meal in a restaurant that's poisoned. I can just get a food in any local restaurant and get sick from it the way they're making food today. You can't believe the garbage. I just can't believe what I'm looking at. The filth that's in the food when you actually analyze it. So the bottom line is that coming back to radio and this whole topic of today is, should we close Gitmo or not? And I said Gitmo is our devil's island. Why does the psychopath in the White House have such a desire in the waning days of his regime, his hateful regime, his devious regime, his painful regime, his poisonous regime, his toxic regime? Why does he want to do this so badly? He doesn't have to do this. Why is he doing this? Do you have an answer to this? It's the most important question I could ask you today, apropos of the story I just told you.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage.
Music's from the era that I like the best, the Cuban music I like the best. But the fact is, I'm asking a question, why does he have such a vendetta, almost a mania, let's put it that way, such a mania to get this done, to close Guantanamo? Why is he closing it? What are his arguments? He hasn't given any. He spoke in generalities as usual. We have our plan. And Ash Carter, that moron, a man who should be tried for war crimes against the military when it's all over. If Trump wins, they should try Ash Carter for the crimes he's done to the military. I don't think Humpty can ever be fixed again. This guy is the worst of all of them, and he's in a long line of the most devious anti-American defense secretaries I've ever seen in my life. It goes back to Panchetta. Leo Panchetta should be on the docket. Every last one of them should be tried for the damage they have done to the greatest military the world had ever seen before this psychopathic left-wing maniac took office. But to calm down a bit, why does he have such a desire to close it? Now, I'm going to let you liberals out there who don't really know the issues but think you do, tell me why we should close Gitmo and release these terrorists or bring them to America. I want to hear your arguments because I think I can defeat your arguments quite readily. I believe that if they are innocent, release them. Let me be very clear. If they're guilty, execute them. It's that simple. They execute American soldiers who violate various conventions, don't they? We had guys put into prison for 20 years in Iraq under that thieving bum, George Bush, who did nothing, didn't lift a finger of his white hand to protect these Marines after they did their job, that evil man, George Bush. Don't you give me this garbage what a great president he was because he was a Republican. We begged George Bush to intervene and get those Marines out of Leavenworth, get them out of these horrible prisons that they were put in by these cowardly commanding officers who were all looking over their shoulder. And so guys were put away and George Bush did nothing. Some of them were given great sentences. How come we're treating these Guantanamo prisoners of war, which is what they are, with kid gloves, and we treat our own men with such derision and hatred? And so the question is, I'm asking this question. Now, I'm opening it up to those of you who want to Give me your liberal point of view of we should release them, bring them to America, afford them all of the benefits of the law. It violates this, it violates that. I'd like to hear your opinion. Now, there's another side note to this, which is Ben Carson said that President Obama grew up in white America. He's not really raised as a black man. He doesn't know anything about the black experience. I think that's a fascinating question coming from an authentic African-American Ben Carson. It's an amazing statement coming from him. He's finally showing some spine. Instead of wasting his time attacking Rubio or this one or that one, finally he's pointing it in the right direction. He aimed his naval guns in the right direction finally. Maybe Trump and Cruz and Rubio could aim their naval guns at the right targets instead of at each other, falling for these stooges in the media who are telling them to point their guns at each other and have a rodeo with each other. Speaking of which, Trump is skipping the Fox News town hall hosted by the deceitful Megyn Kelly. GOP frontrunner Donald Trump will skip a Fox News town hall event for GOP candidates hosted by the network's evil Megyn Kelly. He says that they can't do it because it was put together at the last minute. The campaign has a previous engagement in Virginia and then New York, which could not be rescheduled. Said Trump spokesperson Hope Hicks told the Hollywood Reporter. I don't believe that's the reason. Megyn Kelly is being used as bait by Roger Ailes to attack Republicans again at the behest of his boss Tweed, who sits behind the scenes and pulls the strings. Ailes is as powerful as he is, works for someone. His god is Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch is a Democrat who's supporting Hillary Clinton in my estimation. Rupert Murdoch is an open borders type of guy. Kelly is used as bait. If it was not a family show, I would use other language. Kelly is being used as bait to bait the Republicans into another debate, and Trump didn't fall for it. So instead, the lesser candidates will be up there. The ones that'll never win. Ben Carson, Ted the Vampire Cruz, Marco the Ice Cream Man Rubio, and Governor John Crybaby Kasich will appear on at the town. What is Kasich doing up there? What in the world is he doing there? Well, I told you why they stay in it to the end. You know what kind of money is involved? How many times do I have to tell you? They can't steal the money and use it on their own. But think of all of the idiotic relatives, the ne'er-do-well relatives and friends of family members, the ones who can't get jobs or have low-paying jobs that can suddenly be hired for a campaign at any salary that you want. There's no oversight. Do you know that? So raise $100 million. They don't have to take it for themselves. They only got a fifth cousin who was working in a funeral parlor somewhere in Ohio, cleaning up the slop on the floor of a funeral parlor. Now suddenly he's a consultant to the candidate at $125,000 a year plus all the pizza he can eat, plus first class and bottles of water, whatever. You know the picture. So that's why they stay it to the end. There's a lot of money in this. I was told this years ago. I was told to set up a super PAC. I said, what, are you kidding me? I'm not corrupt. I'm a talk radio host. I'm not greedy. This is what I do for a living. I do this and I write best-selling books. I don't do anything else. I don't need 50 things falling out of my hands to make a living. I don't have to prove to the next. It's like having watch bands up your arm now. Everybody wants to do 50 things at once. Do one thing well. So, who's in favor of keeping it closing? Do we have a lib yet? Here's a lib. We got two libs. Let's go to the lib on WJR in Detroit. Hello, Ron the Liberal. Why should we close Guantanamo Bay? Give us your opinion.
Okay, this is why we should close it. Two reasons. First reason is it's costing me money out of my pocket. I'm a taxpayer. But the biggest reason is, look, these prisoners, if we are going to take them prisoners as a nation, these prisoners should be on American soil. We have plenty of prisons in this country. It is a waste of my tax dollar to put prisoners on some island way. And I know, they're going to say, then we're going to be attacked by them because we've got them. Ain't nobody attacking Cuba, okay? Look, these are our prisoners. Let's take American responsibility for what we're doing. I mean, that's 101, man.
You actually haven't made a point yet. I don't even understand what you just said.
The point is...
have you given a reason to bring them here? I don't know the reason.
The reason is, if we're going to take prisoners of war, they should be on our soil.
But why?
Because they're our responsibility now. As a nation, they are the American government's responsibility. And I know people are going to scream and say, well, if we...
Wait, I'm not screaming. I'm asking you, what do you mean they're our responsibility? They're given Korans, they're given halal meals, they're given prayer mats, they're treated better than most of our Marines who are in prison in Fort Leavenworth. They're being treated very well, plus they're on a sunny island in the Caribbean. What could be better?
But what could be better? The thing is, because they're wasting our tax dollars. It's another fleecing of America that's going to corporate America. They're wasting.
All right, here we go, corporate again. Okay, everything's corporate. That's the buzzword. When you say corporate, do you get a visceral feeling of pleasure?
The corporation.
Whenever you speak, let's say every few sentences, when you say corporate, if you're speaking to friends, do you get a chill up your leg?
What I'm saying is, a waste of my tax dollars. That is just...
All right, so the only point you made that I find to be reasonable is that it's expensive.
I mean, really.
All right, no, okay, so you made a rational point. It's very expensive. It would be cheaper to put them where? Where would you put them?
We have a Supermax in Colorado. I believe there's a couple other ones around. Let's bring them.
All right, that's a rational argument. Why are they not being put into a Supermax in Colorado? You're actually missing the number one reason that Obama really wants them here. It has nothing to do with money. You know why he wants them on our soil, don't you?
Well, go ahead. Give me I don't know why, but give me a reason.
No, you're a reasonable man, and you're reasonable enough to come up with a reasonable thing about money, and you're willing to call a radio talk show because you're a thinking person, right? I mean, you like to think things through. That's what I'm getting out of this. No sarcasm intended, right?
I don't like him that much. I really don't. The only reasonable reason I could see he wants them to bring them over here, I don't know. I don't have a reasonable explanation. It's unreasonable.
Right. Well, I'll give you a few reasons. After the next liberal, I'll give the real reasons why. How's that? But since you're such a brave man to have called with your opinion, I'm sending you a free copy of Government Zero, so stay on the line. Let's go to the next caller, Chris on WMAL in the heart of Washington. Chris on line 1. Go ahead, please. Why should we close it?
Basically, my argument just goes along the lines of what we do there is against the Geneva Convention and United Nations norms. And because of that...
Okay, hold on. No, you made your point. You don't have to add addendum to that. I've heard it before. Okay. Where is it written that people who don't ascribe and follow the Geneva Conventions should be afforded the protections of the Geneva Conventions? Why should these animals be given protections according to the Geneva Conventions when they do the most horrible things to innocent men, women, and children of all religions and races? Who said they're entitled to those protections?
Because they're human beings, Michael.
Oh, no. Not all people who walk in human bodies are human beings. There are devils walking around in human skin. Are you telling me, for example, you know what the Taliban, what the ISIS has been doing to innocent girls in the Middle East, right? Mm-hmm. What do you mean, Tell me what ISIS members have done and are doing in the Middle East to Yazidi girls that they capture.
I don't know.
Well, of course you don't know because you read the college newspaper. It didn't make it to the college paper. They are passing them around like prostitutes, little innocent girls who was clean as you've ever seen, as innocent virgins. They're passing them around like the cheapest piece of meat that they could ever find, repeatedly raping them around the clock. Do you know that? So having said that to you, are you telling me that that's a human thing to do to a young girl?
I'm not saying that all of the people at Guantanamo have done that, Mike.
All right, you're making a good point. Not all of them rape young girls in a theater of war. But what if someone has done something even worse than that? What if they've planted a bomb in a mosque, for example, filled with innocent worshippers of a different sect of Islam, and blew up 150 men, women, and children? Do you think that that's the act of a human being?
No.
Okay. What I'm trying to say to you is we've got to stop living with a textbook view of the world. We're not living with a textbook enemy. These are people who are, by all estimation, the ones who commit these atrocities, they have left the human race. And there's a word for them, but if I use it, my argument will diminish because people will say that I'm something that I'm not. They have left the human race by their behavior, and I would argue that those who have left the human race by their despicable acts of war against human beings have no right to the constitutional protections, and they have no right to the Geneva Convention. None whatsoever. And one of the reasons that they were sent to Gitmo, my liberal friend, is because they were able to be questioned in a way they couldn't be questioned here. You know that? Thank you for the call. I mean, what's the point of having a dialogue? I think he's another intelligent guy who was trying to give an argument that was rational up to a point, because I've seen it. It violates the Geneva Convention. And the people, because you got to understand, Obama, from the beginning, took the legal position that the captives brought to Cuba were not prisoners of war, but they fell into the vague, newly created legal category of enemy combatants. But I would say that anyone who falls into that category or has committed atrocities has lost the right to the protections of the Geneva Convention. And I would cite precedent for this. And I'll give it to you right now. World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as liberal as they come, as socialist by any estimation, a hero of Barack Obama. When Nazi spies landed in America, they landed on Long Island. They were put ashore by submarine. U-boats brought them to New York. They landed in New York, and I think they landed on the beaches. They came ashore in New Jersey as well. Some of them were captured, and pretty quickly, and the others were captured within a few days in America. That's when we really had an intelligence service that took no prisoners. That's when they knew how to break down doors and beat people up to get the information. And believe me, they got the information. They caught those Nazis pretty quick. And take a guess what the fate of those Nazi prisoners of war were. Now, they had not yet even committed a crime. None of them had blown up a train. None of them had sunk a ship. None of them had blown up a schoolyard. They wouldn't do that, by the way, in those days. They weren't the practitioners of the religion of peace. What do you think was their fate? They were executed by firing squad under Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Did you know that? That's what was done to enemies who came ashore to harm us. So now you have a president who has some of the worst people on the planet safely in detention in Guantanamo. And not only does he free the innocent, if there are any, and execute the guilty as he should, but he now wants to bring them to our shores. Ask yourself what Obama really wants to do here. Is this very liberal of him or something else? I'm Michael Savage, back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUY-CO.
Guantanamo harms our partnerships with allies and other countries whose cooperation we need against terrorism. When I talk to other world leaders, they bring up the fact that Guantanamo is not resolved. Moreover, keeping this facility open is contrary to our values.
What
it undermines our standing in the world.
What a liar.
It is viewed as a stain on our broader record of
You're a stain on the presidency.
The highest standards of rule of law.
I can't listen to him without getting very angry. Everything he says is a complete lie. He's talking about values. Don't you love this guy? He's stepped on every value that you can know of as a president. Now, what does he have such a desire for to close Guantanamo? It has nothing to do with what he's saying. Everything is something else. Why do we even have Guantanamo? That's a real question. Most of you don't even know what it is, where it is. You say Guantanamo, you think it's a prison in Miami. It isn't in Miami. It was seized in 1898 during the Spanish-American War in the Battle of Guantanamo Bay. 03, U.S. and Cuba sign a lease, granting the U.S. permission to use the land as a coaling and naval station. And we still have it. Private enterprise not allowed under the treaty.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Guantanamo Bay is the issue. That's what it is. And this is old-style Cuban music going back probably to the late 40s or 50s. No one even knows it anymore except the aficionados. And the point is that since we're talking about Cuba, I'm playing some Cuban music. The thin-smoking man in the White House has such a vendetta against America that in the waning days of his toxic regime, he's trying to jam in as much as he can. And one of the items that he's trying to jam down our throats is releasing their prisoners from Guantanamo, returning the land to Cuba for reasons we've discussed, and releasing the prisoners, putting them on American soil so that they are afforded all the constitutional protections that they're not entitled to. I'll go into that again. And then we have the other issue, which we haven't gotten to yet. Ben Carson claiming Obama was raised white and doesn't understand black Americans. Now, we're allowed to play this because it's Ben Carson. He's saying what everyone in America knows to be true. Obama's a spoiled white kid. He's behaving like a spoiled kid. Take race out of it. He's a spoiled brat. He never worked a day in his life. Did he ever work in his life? Never. Did he ever hold a job? No. Did he ever produce a product that anyone can name? Did he ever produce a service that anyone ever bought? No. He's done nothing for the world. Nothing. Now you say, well, that's, others. No, it's not true. I don't know of any other president in American history who never produced anything before becoming president. Can you name a few? I don't know. Let's say even G.W. Bush, the bumbler. Bush had jobs. I think Bush was in investment banking, wasn't he? He did something. He worked. Obama did nothing. He was a pot-smoking bum in high school. Then he became a pot-smoking bum at Occidental College, according to his own biography. Don't blame me. His own autobiography said he was a druggie. Then the bum went on to Columbia, where because of his race and plain English, he was looked up to by the moron liberals. And he said that's when he became radicalized, when he realized the more he espoused the lines of the Black Panthers, the more respect he got from the white morons. Well, the rest is history. So here we are. Here's a man who's done nothing in his life except jawbone everybody to death with his booming voice and his great looks. And here we are. So now he's telling us he wants to close Guantanamo Bay for this reason and that reason. One is American values and this. It's all rubbish. And I'm asking you what the real reasons are. What are the real reasons are? And then we have the Ben Carson tape. Let's play some of the Ben Carson stuff just for a minute. Let's hear it.
Like most Americans, I was proud that we broke the color barrier when he was elected. But I also recognize that his experience and my experience are night and day. He didn't grow up like I grew up by any stretch, not even close. He's an African American. He was, raised white. Many of his formative years were spent in Indonesia. So for him to claim that, he identifies with the experience of black Americans, I think is a bit of a stretch.
Okay, just the next one. Just run it through. Let's get it over with already.
You have to recognize that what President Obama represents is an ideology that is antithetical to the ideology of most people in the Republican Party. And I don't think it has anything to do with race. I mean, Hillary represents that kind of ideology also. And they'll say it's because she's a woman. I mean, any guy who represents that kind of ideology is going to evoke exactly the same types of criticism.
I wish that there were a million Ben Carsons marching on Washington. Boy, would I like to see a million Carson march. Carson grew up in Detroit with a single mother. She worked 3 jobs. And during this interview, he downplayed racism. He said that discrimination now in 2016 is far better than what he experienced growing up. And he said, remember, now I've been around for 64 years. I've had a chance to see what real racism is. Dr. Carson added that classism, not racism, is the issue on the table. He said a lot of things that people classify as racism is classism. And believe me, there's a lot of classism in our society. And if people of a certain race happen to fall into a lower class, then they get the brunt of it. It's an interesting story that his mother worked 3 jobs and that he was able to go to medical school. And I've got to tell you, got to hear this over and over again. As a trained academic before going into radio, there's a huge difference, as in anything, between doctors, okay? Not all doctors are equal, not all talk show hosts are equal, not all baseball players are equal, not all fighters are equal, not all mothers are equal, not all moms are equal, not all fathers are equal, but I have to say it again. Not all presidents are equal, not all immigrants are equal. Ben Carson is a pediatric neurosurgeon, possibly one of the most difficult practices in the field, in all the fields of medicine. What does it mean? He performs brain surgery on infants and children. You can't fake that. You can't get it the way Obama became a politician. You can't talk your way into the job and keep it. You slip with the scalpel, you kill a child, or you damage him for life, then you're out of business. So he didn't get through medical school based on affirmative action. He got through medical school based on his abilities. You should know that about him. It's important to say that again. It's very important to understand what a fine man he really is and how he achieved it all on his own. A mother, single mother, 3 jobs. It's unbelievable to see that. I went in a store the other night to buy my grandchild a dress. It was, I don't know when it was. It was late at night. It was closing time on a Saturday night. They closed at 8. I was in there 7:45 in a little child store in a mall that was dark. And there was an African-American young woman behind the counter. She was probably tired. And we got off on the wrong foot. Maybe she thought I wasn't what I am. I don't know. She doesn't know who I am. So I said, I'd like the dress on a hanger. She said, I can't give you the hanger. I said, I'll pay for the hanger. I don't want it rolled up in a ball and thrown in a bag. I want it to be, I don't want to lose my job. So one word led to the other, and then we both backed off, and then we made up. We're nice. We realized it was going in the wrong direction for no reason. And I got to talk with her because I speak to people that I do business with, even if it's buying something simple. And I learned something by talking to people. And I said, do you have children? She said something about how old is your grandchild and this and that. And I said, do you have children of your own? She said, yes, I do. I said, well, you must be tired. I said, it's almost 8 o'clock. She says, this is my second job today. You know, your heart goes out to the woman. I don't care what the race is. The woman's working 2 jobs, raising a child alone. You think I don't see these things? I do see these things. And I see the difference between Ben Carson and Al Sharpton. I see the difference between Ben Carson and Eric Holder. I see the difference between Ben Carson and Barack Obama. I see the difference between a Ben Carson and a race hater like Louis Farrakhan. You know, go down the list and you'll understand why Ben Carson is such an important figure in America right now. Of course he can't win a nomination. I just pray to God that if Trump is nominated, he doesn't select. I'm going to make a quick jump now. I didn't intend to do this, but I may as well do it right now. If he picks Sarah Palin, he's finished. It's over. If he makes the mistake by listening to the morons who ran Romney's campaign and picks Sarah Palin or one of the idiots who chops wood for a living, who makes whistles for ducks, he's finished. He cannot pick Sarah Palin as a running mate. It's over. No one will vote for him. She's old goods. She's damaged goods. She's run the course. It's over. Nobody wants to look backwards. He's supposed to represent the future, not the past. She's the past. She had her time in the sun. Andy Warhol said 15 minutes of fame. She had 18 minutes of fame, and it's long enough for me. Those 18 minutes were excruciating. So, actually, I should speculate on who we should pick. I think I'll do that for you. If Trump wins the nomination, who should he pick as a running mate? Absolutely, it should be Ben Carson. Should be the VP candidate. Why not? Why shouldn't it be Ben Carson? What is wrong with that? Will he pick Ben Carson? No. I can guarantee you as I stand here, advisors who failed at everything they've done in their whole life except making extraordinary fortunes doing nothing correctly will advise him not to pick Ben Carson. They'll pick some stooge middle of the roader and will destroy his candidacy, and Hillary Clinton will be president. Another candidate for him would be people you never heard of. Do you know that there's a black Republican congresswoman in the West, in Salt Lake City? You never heard of her. You've never seen her since she was elected to Congress, have you? Why is she not even in the campaign? Why do you never hear from her? Because the idiots who run the Republican Party have put her in the back of the bus. Instead, you see, the same type, the country club Republicans, who are members of clubs that not only wouldn't be allowed into, you never heard of them. Secret clubs with secret handshakes. Groucho Marx said I would never join a club that would have me as a member. It's a funny joke. But they belong to clubs that you never heard of. And they're going to wind up picking the wrong running mate for Donald Trump, as sure as I'm standing here. I can smell it. I can feel it. I have a visceral feeling that his campaign's already going in the wrong direction. I can sense things before anyone else. I'm still a Trump supporter, but I will tell you right now, point blank, what I see happening. Do you remember that other the congresswoman who came on this show? What was her name? Do you remember her name, Robert? She asked for money on this show. Trump doesn't need money. She was saying that Nancy Pelosi is out to get her, and she was so conservative and send money. We helped raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for her. And shortly thereafter, she would never come on the show again. And then she fell into the abyss. She lost all of her creds, and nobody ever remembered. I forget her name up. And who can name her? Come on, man. You got two guys sitting there on the screen. No one. Three people work for me. No one knows what I'm talking about. Is there anyone in the audience? What? Okay, he says something. I can't hear him on the air live, like I'm supposed to listen to him and talk to you. Put it on a screen. Can anyone listening to this show tell me the name of the congresswoman who came on this show as a strong conservative, raised a ton of money off you, the listener, and then soon ditched you and went on to, she thought greener pastures and was never heard from again. Anyone know her name? That's right, Michelle Bachmann. Do you remember that? Thank you, Robert. Michelle Bachmann. And I sense the same thing is going to happen here. I can smell it from a mile away. I don't know why I do it. I have an instinct. I've survived all these years in radio because I have instincts that run out of the three dimensions of the norm. And I sense it happening already. It's going to happen. There's a certain point in a campaign where they get so big that they're no longer in control of their own destiny. And you start listening to people, and the people that they listen to are the worst people on the planet. And they all make the same mistakes. Okay, but coming back to the big story of Obama wanting to close Guantanamo, that's what I want to get back to. And I want to, before we take our first commercial break for the wonderful folks who sponsor this program, which you love so much, I want to listen to Mr. Obama in clip 06. 6, please.
We'll continue to securely and responsibly transfer to other countries the 35 detainees out of the 91 that have already been approved for transfer. Keep in mind, this process involves extensive and careful coordination across our federal government to ensure that our national security interests
like the immigration service,
when an individual is transferred to another country. So, for example, we insist that foreign countries institute strong security measures. And as we move forward, that means that we will have around 60 and potentially even fewer detainees remaining.
Can anyone tell me which countries the previous detainees were released to, and how tight the security is in Oman? Can anyone tell me how many of these monsters, these murderous monsters, have gone back to their business of killing, murdering, kidnapping, raping, and blowing things up? What the rate of recidivism is? Do you realize what a liar he is, that he's saying this as though he makes things up as he goes along? They'll go to countries, insecurity, all aspects of government. Sounds good, doesn't it? To who? Who would believe a word that he just said? These are the most dangerous, hardened criminals on the planet, or they would have been released already. Why does he so intently want to bring them to American shores? Moreover, why does he want to give that land back to Cuba? What is really in it for him and the Democrat Party donors who stole my Presidio from me so greedy private developers could destroy this once great military base? How many local senators and congressmen have made fortunes here in San Francisco off the land transfer of the Presidio? How many of the skunks in Congress have made fortunes off the transfer of military bases to private sources? How many of them have made third, fourth party fortunes off this? How many of them are in the construction business? Can you name the senators and the congresswomen whose husbands are mega contractors who build these enterprises? Because if you can, then you could trace and follow the money all the way back to Guantanamo. Back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Your Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust for tangible assets, gold and silver. Call 800-BUI-CO. So the fanatic in the White House has a desire to close Guantanamo and bring prisoners to the American shores, to give them all the benefits that our Constitution affords law-abiding citizens who get into trouble, and to afford them all of the protections of the Geneva Convention. Now, I want to dispatch your false impression that terrorists are entitled to such protections, because they're not. A friend of mine just looked up the Geneva Convention. Many of you don't even know that it exists. There is a Geneva Convention of laws regarding to rules and law regarding war. And I'll read you Clause 18. By violating every tenet of international law regarding treatment of prisoners, terrorist groups forfeit any entitlement to protection under the Geneva Conventions. U.S. forces would be within their legal rights to treat captured al-Qaeda members as they did Nazi saboteurs during World War II, trial by military commission and execution by firing squad. At least that's one legal opinion on that. The phone number here is 855-407-282. 855-400-SAVAGE. Now let's go to the callers on the... I don't have time. We're just running through this quickly. Should we close Guantanamo or not, as the smoking angry man in the White House would like to do? Remember, Gitmo is our devil's island. The devils who are on that island have all committed crimes against humanity, or they wouldn't be there. They would have been released by now. These are the worst of the worst. Why have they not been executed by firing squad? That's the real question. And why would Obama bring them to a neighborhood near you is the second question. All right. Have we run through the Guantanamo story? Because he made that a big issue today. It's a big issue. And Obama's sound bites on it. I mean, I need to play them. Then we're going to move on to who should Trump choose as a running mate. I say if he chooses Sarah Palin, his campaign is over. It's dead in the water. It's finished. She's part of the past, not part of the future. She's old news. She's rotting guava on the jungle floor. Over. It should be either Ben Carson or someone else. Who would that someone else be? So now he's pushing to close Guantanamo for reasons that make no sense. Whatever. Listen to clip 08 on the Savage Nation, please.
When it becomes clear that something is not working as intended, when it does not advance our security, we have to change course. For many years, it's been clear that the detention facility at Guantanamo Bay does not advance our national security. It undermines it. This is not just my opinion. This is the opinion of experts. This is the opinion of many in our military.
What experts? The same stooges who say that the sea levels are rising?
Propaganda in their efforts to recruit. It drains military resources. With nearly $450 million spent last year alone to
Think
keep
how
it
much
running.
Golfing you could do for that.
More than $200 million in additional costs needed to keep it open going
How much does it cost for your wife's personal assistance per year?
100 detainees.
$200 million is chicken feed to him. If you added up the cost of personal assistance for him, his wife, the mother-in-law, the travel, Air Force One, Air Force Two, golfing vacations, that comes to a pretty penny. I know he's trying to tighten his budget a little bit now toward the end to show how good he is in balancing the books. I think it's the first time he's actually had to look at the books in his entire life. If a man never works a day in his life, how can he know anything about balancing a budget? That's why we're $13 trillion in debt. Because he's spending like a madman, and no one stopped him. There's been no constraint. And it's very important you understand what this actually means. When he came to power, there was a $1 trillion national debt. It's now, $13 trillion? Who are you going to blame that on, Nixon? Why do you think he's run the budget up like this? Because he's printing money in order to buy off the people on the bottom and to pay off those who keep him in office and to buy off those who might throw him out of office. Is that clear enough for you? Write it down. It's 3 simple sentences. That money goes around. It's spread around. That money goes around, it's spread around. Buys off donors, pays off those who might prosecute him, keeps the lower, the have-nots in line by creating programs for them that they're not entitled to. In other words, there are welfare programs of one kind or another, whether it's for consultants who run these stupid think tanks that do nothing or whatever. That's what the $13 trillion has gone for. In addition to paying extraordinarily high amounts of money for things such as disability. The number of people on false disability claims is enough to fill a nation in the country right now. The last I checked, 14 million people were on federal disability. How many of them do you think are actually able-bodied workers? Quite a few. How come he doesn't crack down on that? How much has it cost to bring in millions of illegal aliens and pay for all their services? How many billions of dollars does he give to Catholic charities, Baptist Family Services, all of the other fraudulent religious front groups to service the illegal aliens that are pouring across our border? Where do you think those flat screens come from in the swimming pools? And the training for them and the this and the that. He's paying for it. So he's now suddenly worried about the cost of Guantanamo. It has nothing to do with the cost, in my opinion. Nothing whatever. So the second question is, who would be a good running mate for Donald Trump? I am totally and absolutely opposed to Sarah Palin. If Donald Trump's assistants or managers or whoever they are listen to this show, and I think they do, since many of the things he said to get where he is came from my last 3 books. They're almost word for word from my last 3 books. I can quote you chapter and verse going back 2 years, which is why I like him so much. I don't know him personally. I don't like him because of his shoes. It's not I like him because of his wife or his hairdo. I like him because his ideas reflect my ideas, because they came largely from my books. Go and look it up. Take a look at Stop the Coming Civil War and see if many of the things that Trump is saying don't come verbatim from my plan to save America. They do. That's why he and I resonate so well. Sometimes I listen to him and I say, wow, that makes sense. I look it up there. It was in my book. So there are people who work for him who get their ideas from very varied sources, and one of the sources are my books, in my opinion. However, if he now doesn't pay attention to what I'm saying and starts going outside the field of sanity and starts listening to these idiot consultants who destroyed Romney, he's going to go by the way of Michelle Bachmann, in my estimation. Just that simple. So I'm not attacking Trump. I'm attacking his advisors, who I think are taking him down the wrong roads. It's clear as a bell to me what's happening. And only time will tell whether I'm right. I hope he doesn't flame out, because the last thing we need is one of the communists to run the country. Speaking of the communists, a very fine filmmaker named Spike Lee. He actually is a good filmmaker, incidentally. I know a lot of you resent him, but he's really quite a good filmmaker. Some of his movies were great. I think The Son of Sam I like the best, actually, looking back on the movies he made. That was an eerie movie about Berkowitz, the murderer. Spike Lee is a fabulous filmmaker, but a total, I don't know what to say. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, even Spike Lee. But he put out a South Carolina radio ad for Bernie the Commie in clip number 24, which you have to hear on the Savage Nation.
Wake up, South Carolina. This is your dude, Spike Lee. And I know that you know this system is rigged. For too long, we've given our votes to corporate puppets. Sold the okie doke. Bernie takes no money for corporations. Nada. Which means he is not on the tape. And when Bernie gets in the White House, he will do the right thing. How can we be sure? Bernie was at the March on Washington with Dr. King. He was arrested in Chicago for protesting segregation in public schools. He fought for wealth and education equality throughout his whole career. No flipping, no flopping.
Now, listening to his voice, we know why he's behind the camera, not in front of it. I never knew he had such a poor voice. He really ought to consider getting someone to read his lines for him, because this guy is not made for radio. This guy's made for an eye behind the camera. That's about it, and bossing people around with his hands. Again, he threw in corporate puppets. Don't you love that every other word from these left-wingers is corporate bad, corporate bad. The chickens, corporate bad. The new watchword is corporate. What do they even know what they're talking about? Where do you think he gets his money from, Spike Lee? Does he get it from the people in the street? He gets it from the housing projects? He goes to corporations and begs them for the money to make his movies. Who is he fooling? The whole Hollywood system is built on corporations that know how to make a buck. What do you mean corporate? That's the new watchword now. Corporate bad. That's the hula hoop now of the left. Is corporate. Corporate farming is bad. They provided more food for more people than ever seen in the history of mankind. Corporate's bad. What, would you want to grow your own vegetables and raise your own chickens? I love all these people live in apartments. They live buy drinks, restaurant. Where does the food come from, idiot? It comes from the corporate farmers. I never saw anything like the naivety and the idiocy that passes for conversation. Except today in America, it's getting worse by the day. So now let's go back to some of the topics, some of the calls on the Savage Nation. Bill on WFTL in Florida. Welcome to the program. Go ahead, please.
Yes, we nearly never disagree, Doc. But on this Sarah Palin matter, I think there's something that we should consider.
Aren't you the guy from New York who changed his station and is I recognize your voice. Don't you call from WABC all the time under a different name?
On Beach, let's talk about Sarah Palin, Doc.
Yeah, you're banned from the show because you're a bore. I have an ear that you can't believe. It's uncanny. It's like a stethoscope on a top heart doctor. You know, a stethoscope is a very great instrument if it's on the right ears. I have an ear like you can't believe. I caught him. FTL, now he's calling from. A bum from New York. He was banned from the show because he does it all day long. There's 3 rules in radio that I learned in the first 2 days of radio. 1, no regulars. Do you know what happens when you let regulars on a show? The same ones. Hi, I'm Bill from WMAL. Bingo, you turn the show right off. You don't want to hear the same people every day. That's why I took a break from callers yesterday, because of creeps like him. The guy just now, it's like a plague, like flies. Like horse flies. You can't get him out of the stable. Buzzing, they buzz around. If I have to go to no calls again, I'll do it. If I get another regular, it's over. I'm getting sidetracked already. I can see the energy is waning. I moved off the Guantanamo. I don't want to do this anymore. Play me some Cuban music like Chocolate now to get my energy back up. Because I think I'm going to go have a piece of chocolate and a cup of... Oh, I didn't have coffee today before the show. That's what's the missing link. I was reading the excessive coffee drinking, another discovery, how good it is for you. One day, caffeine's going to kill you, wipe you off. The next day, it saves you, wipes out liver cirrhosis. Every other day, there's another story about coffee. The greatest substance ever found in Ethiopia was the coffee bean. There's one thing from Africa I got to thank them for, is Cafe Arabica. It's wonderful. So one thing the Arabs gave the world after the zero that I really appreciate. They gave us the zero, and then they gave us the coffee bean from Ethiopia. Another thing the Arabs gave the world, now that I think about it, is the distillation of alcohol. Fabulous. Before that, the Euros were only making wine and beer. They didn't know how to make distilled liquor. The Arab chemists knew how to distill alcohol, and they made the hard stuff. It's ironic because they don't drink. It's ironic. Muslims aren't allowed to drink, but they knock down pretty good liquor down there in Saudi Arabia. I knew guys that worked in the oil business. Yeah, the robes. And behind the robes, you know what they're like? Are you kidding me? No, you can't touch that stuff. 50 lashes to you. Did you get the Johnny Walker? Yeah. Right. Cases of it is flown in by U.S. C-47. Whatever they fly, not C-47. The big ones. Probably a straddle cruiser they bring in their booze for the bums in Saudi Arabia. They got to bring it in every month, a load. Bring it in. Oh, you're nothing. You can't touch it. It's against the Quran. Can't touch that stuff. Don't you? 50 lashes, hands get cut off. They're knocking down the booze. They got the women kidnapped in the rugs brought in from Denmark. Judge questions Clinton motive for server. Where was... Oh, so distillation. They distilled alcohol, and they could make the really strong stuff. They don't drink the wine and the beer over there. They like the distillation that their ancestors came up with. All right, so let me ask you this, a simple question. You're listening to the show, you're all interested in politics up to a point, then you're not interested, then enough is enough. How many primaries and secondaries and tertiaries and quaternaries can we take? How many primaries, secondaries, tertiaries, and quaternaries can we take in this country? When will this endless campaign come to an end? It is grueling. It's grueling. It's like a disease that's starting to wear me out. This is going to go on now until November. I can't believe this. And then wait, you think it's over in November? No. This guy in the White House is like the guy who has a tube of toothpaste that he squeezed everything out of. And then in the last 3 months after the election, he will take a hammer to the toothpaste that he squeezed out and squeeze more out of it. So here we are. What kind of voter are you? How do you define yourself politically? I want you to try to think. I want you to think about what I'm going to say to you instead of being a middle school level knee-jerk conservative, which has very little meaning or value today. The whole campaign right now is like at the middle school level. It's run by and for knee-jerk conservatives on the Republican side. It's all about holier than thou. Remember we used to detest people who were holier than thou, how we hated them? Well, now you got people who are playing the game of I'm more conservative than thou. I determine who is a conservative, and you do not pass the test, Mr. Trump. You're not conservative enough for me. Ted Cruz is now the holier than thou candidate. If you're not as conservative enough for him, or you're not as Christian enough for him, not as clean as him, I mean, forget about it. So how do you define yourself politically? Are you a values voter? Are you a party activist? Are you a feminist? Are you a libertarian? Are you a gun enthusiast? Would you define yourself as a cynic? A lot of people would say that they're cynics. They don't believe in anything. The reason they listen to me is because I'm cynical. They like the cynical part of me. They don't like anything else. Are you an isolationist? Would you be a socialist, perhaps? Madam, are you a capitalist? You identify as devoutly religious, neoconservative, optimist, pessimist, true believer, anti-Wall Street, anti-corporate, or politically incorrect. If any of those apply to you, I'm sorry to say that you're like everybody else in the United States of America, where there's so much overlap. And so we now go to the headlines I didn't touch yet, which I really wanted to talk about. I touched some of them. The crazy, insane administration has just said immigrants with AIDS and STDs are now welcome. Now you're welcome if you have AIDS or STDs. That's number one. Immigrants with HIV and STDs will now be admitted to the United States of America. Inadmissible today, maybe tomorrow they will be admitted, would be those with syphilis, gonorrhea, TB, and leprosy. You know, oh, wow. That's showing real spine and brains there in the HHS. They're not letting in lepers? How is that even possible? Just think of the Democrats they could have if they brought in lepers. So now they're letting in people with HIV and STDs, saying that communicable diseases are not a threat to the U.S., even though it'll cost us maybe $1 billion a year to treat them. The minute they get here, it's like they hit the lottery. Free medication, free treatment, around the clock. But they won't admit you if you have TB, leprosy, syphilis, gonorrhea. That's today. They're not that liberal. Are you kidding? Don't think they're that liberal. Back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth with gold and silver. Call 800-BUIC. Here's a very telling article. Marco Rubio will skip CPAC, which is the preeminent conservative gathering in 2016. Plans to snub the Conservative Political Action Conference this year and won't show up at all, according to Breitbart News. Now, why would he ditch an organization's event, the main event of the year, hosted by the American Conservative Union? Why would he do that? It can be held right after Super Tuesday from March 2nd to the 5th. That Rubio is skipping the preeminent annual conservative gathering of thousands of activists in a presidential election year, I think tells you very much about the direction of his campaign. And that has to do with the fact that his supporters are open borders guys. The others are going to be there: Trump, Cruz, Carson. They will be at CPAC this year. They've all attended the gathering in the past several years. In the past, Rubio attended along with his mentor, Jeb Bush. They appeared at 2015. But Rubio won't be going. Why? Because he's for open borders. And that tells you all you need to know about Rubio. So if you want open borders with an R next to a guy who really should be a D, vote for Rubio.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Loading into hour number 3, we are on The Savage Nation. So for an hour and a half, we talked about Guantanamo. The thin man in the White House has a desire to close it. It's one of his punch list items that he hasn't gotten to yet. Taking your guns is on the last on the list. He's saving that for the last 3 months. He'll come up with some executive action which will make you a felon if you own a gun. So in 2010, in 2009, Obama came to power with a punch list. And he's passed everything he's ever wanted and then some, but now he wants to close Guantanamo. Remember, detaining the enemy during wartime is lawful. It complies with domestic and international law. Guantanamo contains guilty men. They're America's sworn enemies. I believe that if any of them are innocent, they would have been released already. If they're not innocent, they should be executed, as Nazis were during World War II by FDR, one of Obama's mentors. By moving them to the United States of America and granting them additional rights and privileges, we're talking about some of the worst people on the planet. Do they have any idea what this litigation would cost? Here is a psychotic administration that has printed money. I called him the greatest counterfeiter in the world's history, Obama. When you think about it, he is a counterfeiter. He's counterfeiting our currency. He came to power. There was a $1 trillion debt, which already was a nightmare that Bush ran up. Bush ran it up through big government spending. The counterfeiter in the White House ran up the national debt to over $19 trillion. And now he's coming up with this is one of the main reasons to close Guantanamo, which is to save money. I mean, is that not a farce? It's a farce. So we talked about that. We talked about who Donald Trump's running mate should be. I said if it's Sarah Palin, he's finished. I'm telling you, it's over. It's over. She's the past. She's not the future. We want something fresh. We want something new. We want something new, even if you love her. She's not going to ignite the audience the way you may be ignited by Sarah Palin. She's the past. And the thing she said about her son last time was stupid. It was almost like you could see Russia from her living room. That's a foreign affair. That was her curriculum vitae on foreign affairs. You could see Russia from Alaska. That was a scream. Sorry, but that kind of stuck with me, that one. I know many of you love her, but it has to do with personality more than anything else. She's feisty. She's conservative. She ran a state. I get it. She's done good things. I'm not knocking that. But she's the wrong pick for Trump to be a VP candidate. So who would be the right one? And while you're pondering that, I'm sorry, because I came up with some names. I think Ben Carson would be great. There are others who would even be great as candidates, too, to go along with Donald Trump as VP. Remember, the vice president is, a ceremonial position, but it's also a training ground, sort of, in some ways, except in the case of Joe Biden, to be the next president. He's been waiting in the wings so long, he thinks that the wings are the Oval Office. He actually had the wings made into an oval, Joe Biden, because he realizes he's never getting past that oval. So who do you think should be the running mate for Donald Trump? Ben Carson, I think, would be great, but I don't know. I don't think he plays that well outside of conservative circles. I don't know if would he really be like pull in Democrat black voters simply on race. I don't know. I don't. I think that they see him as a sellout because he's too successful. He doesn't espouse the standard lines, that people want to hear. The same is true with the conservatives. Unless they espouse standard lines, then the conservatives won't vote for them. They got to hit the points, the main points. Like they've got to thump a Bible, wave a snake, say I'm more conservative than thou. They got to say that I'm more Christian than you are, and then they've got to say I'm cleaner than you are. Then they get the kosher stamp from the conservative mavens in the media. That's what's going on now. Holier than thou, more conservative than thou. I'm sick of it. So here, I'm going to just diverge for a moment. Eating red meat may up fatal heart failure risk. And it was an interesting story because many of us are confused. For years, we heard red meat was bad for you. Then that got backed off once we heard that, learned that it's not the cholesterol per se that causes atherosclerosis, which I wrote about in 1970, amongst others, that it wasn't the cholesterol that it was not necessarily an indicator of dying of a fatal heart attack. And then people started to realize it was whether the saturated fats were oxidizing and causing atherosclerosis through an inflammatory process, and that there was a way to intervene in that process by taking large doses of antioxidants, mainly ascorbic acid, meaning vitamin C and vitamin E and others. And says, oh, wow, I can have my meat and eat it too. Then you can go back and have a burger once in a while, right? So people started to dip back into the meat, figuring that the evidence wasn't that strong against saturated fats. It was whether the fats were oxidizing, as I just said. So now this new study comes out, which is very interesting to me, and I'm sure it's interesting to everyone listening to the show. I mean, anyone over the age of 20 or 30 is interested in living and being healthy. A new study says a harmful chemical in red meat, like your favorite steak, may put you at acute heart failure risk, says new research. Now, I read it carefully, and I was shocked to find out that one of the nutrients I thought was very important for our energy, which is called carnitine, which is see, most vegetarians have no energy. I know there are exceptions, but it's true. They don't have the oomph that they used to have when they ate meat. And one of the reasons I thought was because of the carnitine level. Carnitine. Carn comes from carne, meat. It's a nutrient called carnitine, which is not harmful. It's actually quite good. However, carnitine is broken down in the body and forms a harmful chemical named trimethylamine N-oxide, TMAO, something new for you to worry about. That's a new one added to the nitrites, nitrosamines. Trimethylamine N-oxide, TMAO, is caused from the breakdown of carnitine, which is found in meat. So the study showed that patients with acute heart failure showed higher levels of the oxidized metabolite, TMAO, in those who died or had a repeat admission to hospital with heart failure within the first year. So what does this mean? The doctors found, or the epidemiologists found, that higher levels of TMAO, a metabolite of L-carnitine derived from red meat, is associated with poorer outcomes associated with acute heart failure, one of the main diseases of the heart, Suzuki added. And previous studies have shown TMAO to be associated with mortality risk in chronic heart failure. So now, was it a small study or a big study? Is it valid or invalid? Is it along the lines of the stupid science that Obama quotes that 99% of scientists believe that we're dying from global warming? Is any scientist that he pays off agrees with it? Any hockey stick scientist agrees with it? Well, they measured circulating TMAO levels in approximately 1,000 patients admitted to university hospitals of Leicester NHS Trust with acute heart failure. And the study was published in a legitimate journal called Heart, and it claims to be the first to investigate the association of this metabolite TMAO levels in acute heart failure patients. So now it's back to no meat. There goes the hamburger once a month. Now I have to go back to my Spartan diet. You know that for 40 years I didn't eat meat? I craved it. I wanted it. So many days I wanted ham and eggs, which I grew up on. If I were to have followed the diet I was raised on, I probably would have been dead at 15. I was fed the most cardiotoxic diet in the world. I don't know whether I have protective factors. I'm starting to think there may be protective genetic factors which explain why I'm still walking the planet. I mean, I'm saturated with vitamins and nutrients that you can't believe. I'm like a walking chemical base of antioxidants, and I have been for over 40 years. Remember, I wrote books. Don't underestimate what I'm saying to you. Back in 1972, I published my first best-selling health book called Earth Medicine, Earth Foods. I've been fascinated by the subject ever since my poor father died of a heart attack at a young age. And then when I found out, I looked back as well, maybe my grandfather lived. No, he died younger. So I didn't know when I was young what to do, because I said, oh boy, this is awful. Father, rest his soul, 57, first heart attack at 55. Grandfather came over from Russia, worked his heart out, died at 47. I said, oh, that's awful. Now, you got to think of what this does to a young man who has a family. You're running around with like a gun to your head, not knowing if you're going to drop dead any minute. I'm not alone in this. I mean, America's probably got more cardio neurotics than any country on earth, I would think. And everyone's running around thinking they're going to drop dead of this or that any minute. That's the way we're conditioned, and we try to, ameliorate the risk of that, doing certain things. Well, some don't give a damn, and they do whatever they want, and they get sick and die very young anyway. They think that they didn't speed up their demise. They did. But at this point, I got to tell you that there's good reason not to eat red meat. So that's that. I know many of you know this. It's old news to you. But you should give yourself a pat on the back for not eating red meat. Don't eat it. Don't listen to those, we don't know. I smoke cigars, I eat red meat. Okay, fine. Smoke cigars. Well, put your mouth next to the tailpipe of a bus if you like cigars. You like cigars? Go put your mouth on a tailpipe of a bus. That's what you're putting into your lungs. I love the people who say things like that and pass themselves off as intelligent people and conservatives, telling you it's fine to smoke a cigar and eat like a pig. They have no idea what they're saying. No idea. It's not about them. It's about statistics. It's about looking at 100,000 people or 200,000 people that you can draw a conclusion from, not the occasional individual that has virtually no meaning. So, well, my grandfather drank and smoked, he lived to 98. That doesn't mean anything. It means almost nothing. You're looking at statistical evidence, not the individual. So that's what you have to understand. That's the science of epidemiology, which I studied for a while. And there's certain things that we know, that science knows very, very well. Salt, for example, sodium intake. I have lived a sodium-free life for years. I wouldn't cook with it. Children didn't get it. Cooked nothing with salt, ever. No one missed it. It was naturally occurring in almost everything. Because we only need about a gram of sodium a day, and we get about 5. That explains, to almost the greatest imaginable degree, why there's such a level of hypertension in America. I remember in the 70s when I was working for my doctorate, I'm not allowed to mention it. I understand it offends those who dropped out of high school or in talk radio. It gets them mad. But I'll mention it again. As I was working for my doctorate in the 70s, there was a large discussion about African Americans and the high rate of hypertension in the African American communities. I wouldn't say community because there's no single community, but amongst African American people. High rate of high blood pressure. And it was pretty well understood that it was related to the diet. At the time, there was a thing called soul food. I don't hear that anymore, Robert. It's not mentioned anymore. But so-called soul food, which was very de rigueur in the 70s, was just laden with salt, just loaded with sodium, and it had a lot to do with the high blood pressure epidemic occurring in African American people. I don't know whether doctors even know this anymore, because they just put people on high blood pressure pills and tell them to eat what they want. That's the stupidity of medicine today. Oh, go on now, John. You can eat what you want. Just take these little old pills. You got high cholesterol? That don't matter. Take this pill. You like that strawberry shortcake or the tiramisu after that big fatty Italian meal that can kill an elephant? Go ahead, have that tiramisu after that meal. Just take one of your diabetes pills. Now you wonder why people are walking around taking all these pills. They're living foolishly, taking all these pills thinking that they're countering them, but they're only poisoning their livers and their kidneys at the same time that they're poisoning their hearts and lungs. Anyway, I'm not a purist in that regard, but I do know an awful lot about this field. And what I'm saying to you is very interesting to me that newer knowledge which emerges starts to teach us certain things that we didn't know before. And that's what's exciting about new knowledge. And this is new knowledge. Because I did not know that carnitine, which I favored incidentally as an energy source for people, can be broken down by gut bacteria and form the harmful chemical named trimethylamine N-oxide, TMAO. I did not know that. It was just discovered. So you heard a brand new discovery right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust to protect my wealth. Call 800-BUY-CO. The minute I do a health segment, I know what happens. The call is starting with already the sex questions and the hair loss. You know, before I was even on talk radio, I used to do book tours for health books that I wrote. And it was inevitable. Invariably, every city I went to, no matter what the subject was, if we took calls when I was a guest on shows, I'm talking 25, 30 years ago, it would be like, doctor, can you tell me what I can do for male, or my hair is going to... All they cared about, no one cared about cancer, heart attack, Alzheimer's. They cared about hair, and you know what. Nothing's changed. If a candidate came along and said, I guarantee you vote for me. You vote for me, I'll make your hair grow. I'll make your EDS disappear. What's it called? EDS? No, that's the name of a company run by Ross Perot. It's ED, right? Okay, we'll start again. You step right up and you vote for me as a conservative. I'll restore American values. Every one of you, your ED will go away. Your hair will grow back. Your pyorrhea will disappear. Your skin will clear up. Women will flock to you. Your dogs won't bark at you. Just vote for That's what it all sounds like to me right now. You got to remember, I'm a cynical guy. I was sinful at 8. I was sinful and cynical at 5. That's a great slip of the tongue. I'm a sinner. I admit it. I've been a sinner since I've been born. I'm not a pure guy. Anyone listening to the show not a sinner? Can anyone step up and before throwing a rock tell me you don't live in a glass house? Now, this is funny. You talk about sin. Watch a sinful marathon of movies condemned by the Catholic Church. Turner Classic Movies has found a cheeky way to mark the run-up to Easter, shining a spotlight on mid-century movies censored by the Catholic Church. So during the month of March, Turner Classic Network is going to air more than 24 movies condemned by the Catholic Legion of Decency. That sounds like something Ted Cruz ought to be running after he loses. The Catholic Legion of Decency, an organization dedicated to combating objectionable content in films from the viewpoint of the church. Or Rubio could run it. And through the 1930s, they gave movies grades, A, B, and C, if they were, condemned. And so there were 27 condemned or objectionable films that TCM will run. And I'm going to read you the names of them and why they were condemned. You're not going to believe this stuff. The Catholic League of Decency?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage.
So if you're tuning into the radio to find out, the ratings and who's up and who's down and what this, and he's moving ahead and that horse moved back, and Cruz has moved up and that one moved back and the tail flicked in his face and the horsefly flew into Rubio's eye and he fell to the back and Trump ran ahead, and I'm not going to do it. Not right now. I did it already. Tonight already, you'll find out tomorrow what's happening because it's been decided before they even went into Las Vegas who's going to win. So Turner Classic Movies is going to run mid-century movies censored by the Catholic Church. And the movies that were condemned by the Catholic Legion of Decency, I can't help it. They were organized to combat objectionable content in films from the viewpoint of the church. The Catholic Legion of Decency. And the Legion was founded in 1933 and blah, blah, blah. So they rated movies. So the 27 condemned films being presented by TCM around Easter include 1933's Babyface, in which a young Barbara Stanwyck uses sexuality to get ahead in life. 1956's And God Created Woman, the French film that created Brigitte Bardot's sex kitten image. You seen her recently? 1964's Kiss Me Stupid, a Billy Wilder comedy about a singer who must have sex regularly. Stop it, to avoid headaches. Stop it. I almost lost my pasta salad. A singer who must have sex regularly to avoid headaches? How can you make a movie like that? Isn't the old joke, no honey, I have a headache? Where like the man, right? And then she says, I have a headache. So to her, okay, I don't get it. And 1972's The Carrie Treatment, a thriller revolving around an illegal abortion, which is not funny. TCM even found The Nun to host the primetime block. Sister Rose Picotti, a member of the Daughters of St. Paul and a film critic. I don't know who that one is. She's probably the opposite of what you may think. Anyway, that's a little lighthearted. What else is in the news? This is another screamer. You're not going to believe this one. I'm saying this in all sincerity. This is not made up. The FEC has been ordered by the Federal Election Commission to telling the Jews for Cruz PAC to change its name. If I made this up, you would say I'm making it up as a parody. The Federal Election Commission has told Jews for Cruz PAC to change its name. Why? Why do you have to change its name? The Federal Election Commission on last year told them that the PAC cannot have Cruz's name in its title because it is not an authorized committee of the 2016 presidential candidate. So Jews for Cruz was not allowed to use that name. The PAC's Twitter profile description read as follows, quote, help us fight the Islamic and liberal assault on American Israel. In your heart, you know we're right, and in your guts, you know they're nuts. And at the time, they had 2,500 fanatical followers. So I don't know if this is still running. But at the time, Ted Cruz said, I share a great many values with the Jewish community and the Orthodox community, Cruz said. Chief among them is a passionate dedication to strengthening our friendship and alliance with the nation of Israel. I think I've heard that before. That used to be the litmus test of all candidates, Democrat and Republican. Are you now, or have you ever been against Israel? No. We're for everything they want. Remember that went on for you. Then the Democrats moved away. They turned against them. They became pro-Arab. Then some Republicans slipped out of the fold. And next you wake up and you got Jews working against Israel openly to destroy the state. with organizations that Hitler could have come up with in the name of justice and peace. Beyond belief. You have that song just for fun of it, Robert? Did you find it, Joe? Okay, now for your listening pleasure. This is so obscure. It's like a rare enzyme that I play once a year or so. I know we're in the election season and I shouldn't, but it's a chuckle. Here's a song that was once popular on radio in the 1930s in the immigrant community, in a Jewish immigrant community in New York. They used to take local radio ads, as they still do. I mean, radio stations around America still have local ads. Like, let's say you're in the middle of somewhere in Iowa, right? And there's a local radio host, and you could have Harvey's House of Rubber advertising. You know, if you're on Highway 403 meeting 209 at the junction of the Grand Junction Mountain, somewhere around where the stables come into the railroad park, come and stop at the Harvey's House of Rubber. We guarantee we'll have everything you might possibly need. So they still do run local ads in radio, specializing in the very inexpensive costs for the local audience. Well, in those days in New York, this ad was run specifically aimed at the Jewish community for a discount clothing store. Let's hear it. You know, when I hear a thing like that, I could just see George Bush the bumbler listening to it and like nodding along as though he understands it. That's the thing I always loved about him. He'd like go to a foreign meeting, like with an Italian speaking or a German, and they'd stand up, and Obama does it. Obama speaks one language. That's it, but he makes believe he understands. They all do, like, They fold their hands in front of themselves, and the guy's speaking like in Turkish. And he's standing in, like they understand every word. They don't know a word he's saying. He could be saying, look at this dummy next to me. I come to this country, and this is the best they can do. And he's, That's what when I hear. You get the joke? Does anyone get this joke in the U.S.? Can I wake you up a little bit? Must everything be so darn serious? Is it really life and death? My friend fell off a motor scooter, but that's life and death. I visited him last night. Not funny. Not funny, but for the grace of God, there goeth I. And we wish you a speedy recovery, Mr. MK. I hope you're listening to the show right now. The only benefit, if there is such a benefit to being laid up in bed, is that you get a chance to listen to my show 3 hours a day instead of making money to give it away to charities. I hope you're listening and you're doing well. Phone number is 855-407-282. You want me to go back to regular programming? I can't take it. What's this now? Oh, here's one. Here's in the stack. The stack of stuff. The Obama CIA is putting diversity above national security. Really? No kidding. John Brennan, the head of the CIA, is not concerned so much with ISIS or Al-Qaeda or threats of terrorism. No, he's concerned with making certain that transsexuals can get into the CIA. It doesn't matter whether they're good at the job. It just matters that they're transsexual. And so he's now going to make certain that there are enough transsexuals to satisfy the inclusion mandate. And they're also going to search the CIA, and I'm not making this up, for, quote, unconscious bias training. Do you know what unconscious bias training is, Mr. Brennan? It was written about by George Orwell. It's called Thought Police. How dare you become such a lowlife as you've become? They're going to look into unconscious bias inside the CIA. He says that he's going to make sure the CIA has no form of unlawful discrimination. Oh, we all want no discrimination. We all know there is none. There's no discrimination in the federal government. There can't be, except against white heterosexual Christian males who served in the military. That's the only discrimination that's permitted. You can laugh at them, you can mock them, you can demote them, you can deride them. But other than that, there's no discrimination. However, don't you think it's dangerous that this dummy in the CIA is creating diversity quotas for hiring and promoting idiots instead of promoting people who can do the job best to protect us? I mean, what was the CIA created for? What, is a social experiment for people who can't get jobs anywhere else? So, fine if you're a transsexual and you're a better person at the job than the next guy for that specific task. I don't care what you do in your private life. But why must you fill a quota for transsexuals in the CIA? How stupid can you get? And the worst part of it is unconscious bias now. This is not in the university anymore. The insanity of what was going on in the universities for the last 10 or 20 years has now seeped into the government as a result of you-know-who. I don't even want to say the name or the initial. I'm going to try to actually not say his name or his initial. He is so offensive. I find saying his name so infuriating that I won't even say the name anymore. I'll just say you know who. You know who. You know who. Where is the sound that I threw? Oh, I didn't even get back to this stuff. I got such good things. Okay, so now he's got other arguments of why we should close down on Guantanamo. And he's going to move them around. Here's clip number 10 of You Know Who on the Savage Nation.
We're going to work with Congress to find a secure location in the United States to hold remaining detainees.
How about the White House?
Detainees who are subject to military commissions, but it also includes those who cannot yet be transferred to other countries or who we've determined must continue to be detained because they pose a continuing significant threat to the United States. We are not identifying a specific facility today in this plan. We are outlining what options look like. As Congress has imposed restrictions that currently prevent the transfer of detainees to the United States, we recognize that this is going to be a challenge, and we're going to keep making the case to Congress that we can do this in a responsible and secure way, taking into account the lessons and great record of our maximum security prisons.
And why is he so anxious to move them into our maximum security prisons? As you well know, there's a problem in our maximum security prisons of Muslims converting inmates to radical Islam. Now, why would Obama want to even take that risk? I don't think I even have to answer the question. There is one element. One, you get the land back to Cuba. Cuba then can develop the land. Cuba then hires American developers who are related to American congressmen and senators to build huge housing complexes and resorts where Guantanamo Bay Prison once sat. That's number one. So there's the money element, the greed. The Democrats are salivating for the resort complex that could be built on Guantanamo. And I can almost name the developers who will get the contracts. I can almost guarantee you I know who they are without saying the word. You can pretty much fill in the blanks. Just think shopping carts and lasagna, and you'll get the answer. Shopping carts and lasagna will give you some pointers. Then, if you want to make a pillow factory, you put it on Guantanamo Bay. If you want to manufacture enough pillowcases and pillows to go around, you make them on Guantanamo Bay. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is you get a three-for out of this if you do. You close it down, you transfer wealth to the donors of the Democrat Party by building on Guantanamo Bay. Two, you get to seed more Islamic terrorism in the prisons. That's two. That's a twofer. And then there's the threefer. You get to override everyone in Congress who has common sense and loves the country, which is probably the most important one for Obama, since right now he's in it only for the pleasure factor of making everyone suffer as much as he can while he still can do it. That's all. And that's a real pleasure for him to override Congress every way he can. You know what pleasure that is? That's amazing. Say, I love the fine words he gives. They're entitled to this, they're entitled to that. How come he doesn't say that about the veterans who are dying in hallways? First of all, what he's saying is illegal. Secondly, he is acting like a czar again. Listen to clip 11 of Darrell Issa, who's still a fine man, in clip 11 on the Savage Nation about closing down Guantanamo.
This has been a goal from day one. He had a full czar whose job it was to close Guantanamo. But the fact that he's willing to do it in violation of an explicit law, an explicit signed by the president determination that he not be able to do it, probably has two things. One is the fact that he has very little to lose in his opinion. He doesn't believe the American people will impeach him. And with the death of Justice Scalia, he probably views that the Supreme Court might back him by a 4-4 decision, even if it's clearly a constitutional violation.
Notice that Mr. Issa ties the pillow job. The pillow job was tied into this. Soon after, before Scalia's body is cold already, he's pushing closing Guantanamo. He's shopping it to the girls. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's court. Now we have the gobbler. He's heard from again after he got the coal. Here's old McConnell. Old McConnell had a farm. E-I-E-I-O. Well, here's McConnell, the gobbler. He's gobbling now about the Guantanamo in clip 12.
Congress acted over and over and over again in a bipartisan way to reject the president's desire to transfer dangerous terrorists to communities here in the United States. The president signed all these prohibitions, and his attorney general recently confirmed that it is illegal for the president to transfer any of these terrorists into the United States. So we'll review President Obama's
listen to him. The malarkey. He sounds like he's throwing malarkey. His heart's not in it anymore. He did what he was supposed to do. He's like a salmon who swam upstream and spawned. He spawned the coal deal, and now he hasn't been heard from since. McConnell's like a salmon. Swam upstream, spawned, and now he's got no use anymore. So now he doesn't mean anything. Oh, wait a minute. We got the Hillary trying the preacher routine at the Gospel Awards. I know that the sound is bad, but you got to hear this. She goes into this gospel thing that is a scream. Back in a minute on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or Swiss America.
They're doing everything they can to stop black people, Latinos, poor people, young people, people with disabilities from voting. It's a blast from the Jim Crow past. I thought we had won that battle back in the 1960s.
Oh, how embarrassing.
To see it rear its ugly head is such a great disappointment. It's one of the barriers that I intend to knock down.
She's a demagogue of the lowest order. She'd be so dangerous for America. She'd make Obama look like a prince. This is a vicious human being. How could she say a thing like this at a time like this in America, when there are so many people rampaging in the streets, killing people because of their race, killing cops, saying black people are being blocked from voting? What a lie. They're flooding America with Hispanics, and they're saying Latinos are not allowed to vote. Well, if you're a non-citizen, you're not allowed to vote. When have you heard of young people not being able to vote? When have you heard of people with disabilities not being able to vote? This is all illegal. And yet this evil woman, who in many people's eyes, who is a criminal for what she has done with the email scandal, if you had done 1/10 of what she did, 1/1000th, you would be in a prison right now. And this harridan has the nerve. Well, you know the big lie. It was perfected by Goebbels under Hitler, who said that if you tell a big lie often enough, it will become the truth. This is all she has to sell, is the big lie. And that's why I say, despite the internecine warfare of the Republicans, any Republican would be better than this dangerous nightmare who we have.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
So who is your inner Sandman? Is it Rubio? Rubio could be no one's inner Sandman except Sheldon Adelson. And it tells you a lot about Sheldon Adelson that Rubio would be his inner Sandman. Cruz looks like, I'm sorry, again, I know. You got to go through the whole litany. Cruz would make a wonderful guy. Don't attack him. He knows the Bible. He knows the Holy Ghost, and he knows the Constitution. Wonderful guy. The problem is he looks like a vampire. Can't win. End of story. The shady eyes. Don't know why. I saw this article over the weekend. Ted Cruz thinks Duck Dynasty actor would make great UN ambassador. Yeah, just what we need in the UN. A guy with a headband and a beard that looks like he's out of a vampire movie himself. He's coming to slaughter your whole family after taping your mouth shut. Sure, send him to the UN, Ted. That's a good idea. I'm still examining the Scalia death. I haven't dropped it from my website. What, just because you dropped it means I forgot about it? I haven't, so people are still asking about that. Here are some of the questions. I don't know. I don't want to do this. I got spring fever today. I know in the East Coast it's not spring yet, but the allergies are so bad here. And I finally understand what spring fever is. It's basically allergies, where you walk around in a fog. You don't even want to work. So I wake up and I see Jeb Bush is out. You feel bad for him after. He burned through $130 million. $130 million. And I looked into where the money went. We'll have that for you on the show. Because I told you all these guys stay in it as long as they can. They know they can't win. But the money that is being spent on cronies and friends and wives and cousins and idiot moron relatives they didn't talk to who are now becoming their consultants and travel with them in an entourage like Elvis Presley, that's where they stay in it. Between the advertising and going to clubs and valets and pizzas and people and Vegas and branding and consultants and pizza. Everyone stays in it for that reason. If they steal $1, they go to jail, but they don't. They hire the idiot cousin that couldn't get a job. So what's in the news? Pope calls for worldwide ban of death penalty. Again? Does this guy know? Doesn't he know how to shut his mouth? When did he stop being when did he start being a pope? That's the real question. Was he ever a pope? I mean, who is this guy? He was a bouncer in Argentina. They found him. They made him, whatever. Leave me alone with this. The Red and the Black. Read that French novel from the early, what was it, 1820, 1840? The Red and the Black, where an ambitious young ambitious man in France realizes that the society is very restricted. And the only routes to becoming successful in France at that time was through the red or the black. And he traces two lives, the red and the black. The red is the army and the black is the priesthood. Political. The church was a political organization like it is today. Pope calls for worldwide ban of death penalty. Who is this guy? The Obama administration wants to make sure non-citizens vote in the upcoming election. That's a big story. Loretta Lynch should be impeached already. Here is the top law enforcement official in America, and she's saying she wants to make sure that illegal aliens can vote. Attorney General Loretta Lynch. The Republicans should impeach her for violating the terms of her job. Right. Most Democrats say socialism has positive impact on society. What do they know? Democrats appear to be embracing socialism more and more, blah, blah, blah. A 6 to 10 majority of Democratic Americans say socialism has a positive impact on society. What do they know, idiots? What do they know? Socialism kills. I have a story on that. Out of Israel, from the J-Post. Not feeling the burn. Israelis snub Sanders' outreach attempt. Why? Why do they hate Bernie Sanders? He's Jewish. Well, no, he's not Jewish. He said he's not a practicing Jew. I don't know. He's an unpracticing Jew? I don't know what that means. I'm not a practicing Jew. Bernie Sanders says I'm not a practicing Jew. What does that mean? So he's an unpracticing Jew or an unpracticed Jew? Okay, he's an unpracticed Jew. That'd be like a Catholic saying, I'm not a practicing Catholic. Well, what are you practicing instead? Witchcraft? What are you practicing, Bernie? You're practicing hatred 101. But the Israelis said the reason they don't like him is because, I'm quoting now, socialism increases racism and hate as it places every sector's hand in the other's pocket and everyone's hand into his friend's pocket, which creates animosity between different groups in society. That says it well. It really does. But, I have to think about that. About it. Not all socialists are bad. Inherently, they're just, let's say, they've lost in life. They're miserable. They hate everyone around them. Anyone who has a nicer car. As it said, a nicer car, a nicer suit, a nicer pair of shoes, a nicer wife, a nicer girlfriend. That's the natural home for a socialist. It's a place for people filled with hate and resentment. Those on Social Security checks in Cafe Trieste in San Francisco, for example. Guys who've never worked a day in their life. They collect crazy checks, and then they hate the world. Yeah, this one blocked them from becoming a famous film writer. That one blocked them from becoming a novelist. But the fact of the matter is, I'm thinking about it. I started in radio in 1994, and I look back, and I wonder what my life would have been had I not had the motivation to send out a demo tape to 425 stations and be invited by 3 or 4 to be on their stations. And the rest is history. I mean, I went from local to national and now very successful and very happily successful after all these years. But if I look back and I say, well, what if I had not sent out that demo tape? And what if I, like today, was still living in that rental house from 1994, driving an old Volvo, 4 on the floor, I think an old 4-cylinder Volvo, right? I'd be wearing the same clothing. Ponytail would be down to my ankles. I would have so many medical conditions from sitting around with anger that my itis would have itis on it. Every itis I have would have an itis on it. I have so many itises being cared for free through socialism. See, they invent illnesses, a lot of people who have free medical care. If you have nothing to do all day, think about it. If you have nothing to do all day except go to the doctor and it's free, And people don't like you. Your wife doesn't like you. Your mother doesn't like you. No one likes you. Children don't talk to you. The only one who listens to you is the doctor. So if you can get a nice young doctor to listen to you, complain for 7 minutes, let's say, where the time you're allowed in Kaiser Hospital or somewhere, and they ask, so what's wrong? What's hurting? What hurts you, mister? And you tell them, and then they go to another doctor, a neurologist, a proctologist, a psychologist, an ologist I never heard of. They do all day long. They book them. It's like their booking schedule. Most of you have a calendar where you look at my calendar, what you actually have to do. They book it. They look at the calendar to see what doctors are going to go to that week. That's socialism 101 when it's free. You got to make them copay. So I'm thinking now, if I had not gotten into radio, I might have been a Bernie Sanders supporter now, I think about it. Like half the people in Marin County, nasty old people running around. They'd run you over if they could on the road here. Gray hair, mean. These are the type who went to Cuba to collect sugar cane. So, you can understand how people wind up in those places. But you want to talk about the Inner Sandman. I was going to talk about that for a minute because that's the opening song. The Inner Sandman. It's called Sandman or Inner Sandman, the Motley Crue. Huh? Is Sandman or Inner Sandman? Is anyone listening to the show? Because the phone number is 855-407-282. Why do you still support Bernie Sanders when he's finished? He didn't have a chance to begin with. He was used by the Democrat Party to make her look more centrist. Who told you that? Me. What's the name of the song, Robert? We don't know. Still checking, but at the end of the show, I'll let you know the name of the song. Enter Sandman or Inner Sandman? Oh, Enter Sandman by Metallica. I'm asking you who your Sandman is in this election. Many think that Trump is their Sandman. Many think that Cruz is their Sandman. I don't think too many people think that Dr. Carson is their Sandman. But is Trump your Sandman? Is Trump your Inner Sandman? Because he's going to disappoint you. You know he's going to disappoint you because all politicians have to. No politician can give you 100% of what you're dreaming for, but you dream that they can. So even though many of you know that Trump is quite liberal on social issues, which he is, why do you still support him? I think that's a critical question. He had a gonzo victory over the weekend. Cruz has basically got his nose broken. Cruz was left busted in the street. I mean, all the predictions, he waved the snakes, he waved the Bibles, went down there, he pandered to the evangelicals, he used every dirty trick known to politics. He used every dirty trick known to politics, Cruz, the vampire, and he got trashed. I wonder where his supporters are today. They must have had a really bad Sunday, that's all I can say. So it must have been like a funeral for the Cruzites out there. Okay, so Trump won. It looks like all of a sudden, all the people who hated him, put him down. All of a sudden, he could win. Oh, that guy Trump could win. I've known it all along. Yeah, look at that. He's one of those winners. Well, there's no reason not to get behind him now, Bernie. See, they're all lining up now. They're all making calls. They want to be a consultant, an advisor, an ambassador to India. All of a sudden, because they know he could win, all of a sudden he's not so bad anymore. Now, I supported him from the beginning for a number of reasons. Number one is because I think he can beat Hillary. That's the number one reason. Do you know that? And you don't understand why that's important. Even if he is somewhat liberal on some issues, as I've told you, stop being a purist. Purists can't win. They win in academic discussions. Purists win on radio. Purists win in closed sessions with college students. Purists win when they have their own little conventions. That's where purists thrive. But on the big stage, known as the national election, purists never win. Do you know that? You know that. Okay, you don't know that. Well, I'll give you a little lesson on that. So the point is, a couple of weeks ago, I gave a very brilliant monologue on blood in the water, purists versus pragmatists. And I do know that it hit home. And I said then the frenzy is based upon the fact that Donald Trump is the new gladiator. He's the knight in shining armor that most American women have been waiting for forever. He's the man on the white horse that most American men have been waiting for. And I wrote that, listen to this, this was 1/28/16. What the media senses right now is that by Fox turning on Trump, they have put a chink in his armor, so to speak, And that's caused a little bit of blood to come out of Trump, and the sharks are going crazy. They smell blood in the water. They want that wound opened up even further. They want to see that knight in shining armor on the ground bleeding to death, vanquished at last by the Democrat, socialist, Islamist media complex. And then I said the Democrats are laughing because they see the entire Republican Party split in two, with the purists attacking the pragmatists, and the pragmatists mocking the purists. And I wrote, however, both sides happen to be right. Of course we would all like a purist candidate. However, most every election in the past has been lost on the Republican side by purist candidates who did not appeal to the masses. Or people just set out the election if the candidates are not pure enough for them. I understand that, given what Boehner and McConnell and Ryan have done and are doing to the very voters who put them in power to advance the conservative agenda against the extremist President Obama, who should still be impeached before he destroys what's left of the country, or against the extremist liar Hillary Clinton, or as such. I wrote all of that, and I still agree with it. But the point of this discussion is a little different than what you may think. I'm asking you, is Trump your inner Sandman, even though you know that he's not a purist? We know he's going to waffle on issues. Why do you still support him is the main point. See, this is what I want to know. Why do you still support him, even though you know, listening to him here and there and this and that, you've come to say, well, you know, he's really not right on this issue, and I don't trust him on that issue, but I still am going to vote for him. Why? Why are you going to vote for him? What is the zeitgeist of Donald Trump that makes you want to vote for him, even though he doesn't help you, let's say, check off every box on the so-called conservative checklist of wish list, so to speak? Why? I mean, I know why I picked him from the beginning. I told you that right from the get-go, and I'll tell it to you again. Now, if you want to join the conversation, you can grab a line at 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. I'll be back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth and financial future. Call 1-800-289-2640. Talking about the Sandman phenomenon. Now, Obama, who was an unknown, came across as a Sandman who would answer everyone's wishes. Remember that? In fact, when I first heard him, when he was saying he's going to shrink government, he's going to make it honest, he was saying we're going to make it as transparent as you can imagine, we're going to kick the bums out. He was a liar. The man has turned out to be an authoritarian demagogue of the lowest order, and now he's still lying through his teeth. I want you to listen to clip 19 of the last Sandman we got, Barack Hussein Obama, in clip 19.
We have been very stringent and very tight, and our numbers all check out when it comes to the costs and the benefits that we apply to these tests. Even on some of the big regulations you hear about that you don't like, they're not issued unless the benefits substantially outweigh the costs. And we have the numbers to prove it. So for those of you who think that I'm just a big government crazy liberal, you know, we're actually, we crunch some numbers around here. We take it very seriously.
Can you crunch the numbers on Michelle's 72 personal assistants, Mr. Obama? How do those numbers work out? You said that unless the benefits substantially outweigh the costs. Do the benefits to your wife outweigh the cost to the taxpayer? And by the way, can you please crunch the numbers on all the golfing vacations that you've taken, you and your family? Do the benefits outweigh the costs, Mr. Obama? Let's just start with you and your family. How about the cost of your mother-in-law living in the White House? Who pays for that? Do the benefits outweigh the costs, Mr. Obama? So he's still lying right to this day. So you say, who's the next Sandman? That's the question. Obama lied. They all do. That's why they're called politicians. The word politician inherently means someone who's going to deceive the public. That's what it means. You run for office, you have to appeal to the widest possible audience that you can, and then deliver as little as you promised without getting thrown into jail. That's the nature of a politician, which is why I'm not in politics. You think with my charisma I couldn't have run for office? You must be joking. What, are you joking? I couldn't have run for office? I'll be back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Yeah. rock and roll of talk radio, the Savage Nation. It really is in its own way. I was watching that show Vinyl on HBO. It wasn't bad last night. It got better. Billions got worse. You know, one gets better, one gets worse. These Sunday night shows. At least I got Vinyl to watch before Billions. So I got 2 hours to kill on Sunday night without a total and absolute Welsh-schmerz meltdown on a Sunday night, which is always the worst night of the week. The worst night of the week. Even as a kid, those Sunday nights were a disaster for me. Ed Sullivan, suicide. When I saw Ed Sullivan, the Ed Sullivan Show coming on Sunday nights, I got such a depression, I didn't even know what it was. A sadness, a horrible feeling. Because I had to go to school the next day with a teacher who had toilet water on her that gave me a migraine. I didn't know to this day what it was, what I hated about elementary school. It was her toilet water. And that I don't mean to be a little, it's a family show, but she'd expose herself to the children. I maybe by accident, I don't know. But the whole combination package got me sick. To this day, I remember that teacher. I get migraines from it thinking about it. So we're talking about this election. And, okay, so Saturday night was the big thing, the big victory. I didn't even know it happened. I didn't watch it. The returns. I went somewhere. I don't know where. It's nowhere important. It's not important. Last night I went to a Latin dance. I loved it because you can escape for an hour or two to the great music of, I grew up with that music in New York. It's unbelievable. This guy's a local group, Mazzacote. It's unbelievable. You watch the musicians play. I know I'm drifting off from what you want to hear about, but it's a whole thing. Your life is a whole thing. It's not two-dimensional, folks. It's many-dimensional, or else you're just a Democrat or a Republican, which I am not. I never have been. So I'm saying, okay, so who's your Sandman? For some it's Cruz, for some it's this one, for some it's Trump. Obama, we saw what kind of Sandman this guy was, this liar. He's still getting away with it. So the next one's going to disappoint you. I mean, Hitler was Germany's Sandman. They were in a depression. They lost the war. They were humiliated. He came up with a scapegoat. The Jews did it to them. And look where he went. Now we learned today Hitler had a deformed penis as well as just one testicle, historians claim. If I were making this up, you'd think I'm a clown. It was a story today on the Drudge Report. I couldn't believe my eyes. I said, what? I heard about the one thing. I didn't know about the other part. Hitler had a tiny deformed you-know-what as well as just one you-know-what, historians claim. Hitler suffered from a condition called hypospadias. Hypospadias? It sounds like a Greek dish. Hypospadias? It sounds like spanakopita. Spadias, which left him with an abnormally small manhood, according to historians Jonathan Mayo and Emma Craigie. And that's what made him rage and conquer other countries. Oh, God. That's horrible. I thought it was the hypoglycemia, where he would eat these rich pastries, because he was a vegetarian and a teetotaler. He didn't drink alcohol. And he was a veggie. He didn't like to kill animals, only people. He liked to torture people to death and watch movies about that. But he would get sick if he watched an animal being hunted. But I thought it was the hypoglycemic attacks that accounted for his madness. Low blood sugar. But the notorious playground rhyme about his single you-know-what seems to have only told half the story, as a new book claims the leader of the Third Reich had a micro-penis. Now, why am I telling you this? One, because you're interested in it. I saw it this morning, and it's from a newspaper in England called a Telegraph. Maybe the guy's just selling a book. How would you know a thing like that? Oh, they've discovered medical records which confirm the Fuhrer's embarrassing deformity. I don't want to read all the details. I'll leave that to you. This discovery that Hitler had only one and a small one may explain why Hitler was allegedly afraid of being seen naked and the cause of his famed fits of rage. It also is likely to add to fuel to the debate on Hitler's sex life or lack thereof, which is fiercely contested by historians. In his biography of Hitler, the British historian Ian Kershaw said the Austrian-born Nazi was repelled by sexual activity of any kind as he feared catching an infection. He only liked to invade and murder. That's all. Sex he didn't like. That goes back to the war, like the Vietnam War, where they put flowers in the gun and said, make love, not war. They weren't wrong in a way. They should try to do that with the Taliban. Put a flower in their rifle barrel, girls. All you aging hippies in Marin County. Go over there to Iraq and Syria. See if you can put a flower in the Taliban's gun barrel. See if you'll get away with it. But I'm getting distracted here by this story. because it connects to my main theme. My main theme is that you're looking for a Sandman. Everyone wants a Sandman to save the country, right? That's what we're all here. Now, we know Hitler is, we know Hillary's not the Sand Woman. We know that. We know what to get from her. She's a complete liar. Useless liar from a thug machine. Worthless. So we know she offers nothing. No hope, no change, nothing. Not even the hope of a change. Zero. At least Bernie Sanders, to his socialist credit, offered something. Albeit a flawed concept of socialism, but he offered something to people who are desperate for the system to be broken over their knee. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. There are a lot of people out there who are, for one reason or another, dissatisfied, whether they're poor or they're on bad health or they're a misguided, hateful immigrant who shouldn't have come here to begin with. They think Sanders is going to help them. He wouldn't help anybody, pit everyone against everyone. That's what they do, socialists. But anyway, he offered something. He was the Sandman and still is the Sandman, Bernie. Actually, Sanders, Bernie Sandman. We're going to call him Bernie Sandman from now on. But on our side, we got a couple of Sandmen. We got, actually, some look like bagmen to me. We got Ted Cruz. We got Marco Rubio, who looks like a bagman for Las Vegas. And Donald Trump was beholden to no one. Now, you see, I talk to people who are worth a lot of money, and they say at least he's not part of the system, and he's not beholden to anyone. I think that's almost the crux of the whole matter. Now, his beautiful family doesn't hurt him, by the way, but they weren't seen in the beginning. So you can't say that's the big reason for success. His unadulterated ability to stand up to bullies by being a bigger bully makes him appealing to us because we live in such a vicious world that we need someone to bully the vermin on the planet into submission in plain English. It's like getting a verbal cage fighter running for the presidency. Write it down before it's stolen, before it leaves my mouth. Trump is like a verbal cage fighter, and we don't care how crude he is. We don't care how rude he is. We just want him to take the enemy and make him bleed on the canvas. We'd like to see our enemies smashed to death and bleeding on the canvas, having to be dragged out by an ambulance, on a stretcher. And we know he's the one who's liable to do it, no one else. It's plain English. We all want a strong leader after this 8 years of this wimpy liar who stabbed us in the back. You know, talk loudly and carry a limp stick. Barack Obama. Tough with everyone in America and a wimp on the world stage. Because he knows he can control us with the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA. We're all afraid of him. Because he uses these corrupt governmental agencies to intimidate us in plain English. Okay, so, as I stand before you, I come back to my primary Monday theme today. Who is your Sandman and why? And we go back again to Donald Trump. He's the Sandman for a lot of people, for the reasons I explained. Now, many of you distrust him. I get that. You distrust him for your reasons, and I understand that. Whether I do or I don't is irrelevant to you. You're skeptical, and you're naturally skeptical of anyone in politics, which you should be. And that's absolutely true. However, remember how he came to power and on what theme? Build a wall with Mexico. Do you remember? And right after Kate Steinle's vicious murder at the hands of a Mexican illegal alien in San Francisco, it sure struck home. It was right after he announced that issue of build the wall, make the Mexicans pay for it. It was like someone saying it after Obama destroyed our borders and told the Border Patrol to stand down. Someone's going to stand up for America's borders. Hey, that's a big one. Because how many years have I been preaching the mantra of borders, language, culture? Forever. Borders, language, culture. See, with borders, you get language and you get your culture back, by the way. Without borders, you have no language and you have no culture. It seeps out of your nation, just as your protoplasm will leak out of your cell if you destroy the cell membrane. Or in the case of a plant, the cell wall. The protoplasm leaks out of the cell if you cut the membrane or the cell wall. Same with the border. You cut the border, the culture seeps out, and in this case, diseases and terrible foreign influences seep in. Because not all immigrants are the same, that's number one. Not all cultures come here to add anything, we all know that. Number two. And there's a lot of hurting people in America, number three, who don't want the competition. Now, having said that, please don't put me in the category of Mr. Xenophobe, because I'm the last person on earth. And I'm going to prove it to you. I challenge any other talk show host in this nation, left or right, any one of these lily white talk show hosts, liberal or conservative, to tell me that they actually go down in the streets with the average person. They don't. I dare any lily white talk show host, NPR or anywhere else, to tell me that they go to a dance, as I did last night, with 98% black and Latino men, which I did. Why? I didn't do it to prove anything. I went for the music. Because I found something out a long time ago, even when I was a young man. Music is a universal medicine. And I'm talking about music. I'm not talking about violence expressed in lyrics and with instruments. I'm talking about beautiful music, which tends to glorify romance, and it glorifies woman. All Latin music is about romance and women. That's all it's about. Do you know that? It's always my heart, mi corazón, son, my heart, my heart, my heart. All of the music is beautiful, but it lifts you up and carries you away. And then to watch people dance, and you see the movement of the feet and the swaying of the bodies and the way the skeletons move underneath the flesh, and you realize it's spirit animating body. That's a beautiful thing, and I enjoyed it last night. And it's a funny thing, you know, if you're in a crowded dance hall, if I rub against a black guy or a Hispanic guy, it's always like, well, excuse me. Both sides. I'm not a threatening looking person, but I'm a human being. It's always, oh, excuse me. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It was polite. So what I'm saying to you are several things at once. Xenophobia comes from not understanding people because you're never around them. You don't even know who they are. You have no idea. Oh, I don't like this one. I don't like that one. It runs in all races, by the way, all different directions. You actually have to be around other human beings to understand that they're all human beings, good, bad, and ugly, you know, and indifferent. So, having said that, we come back to who's the Sandman. Who's your Sandman? And since we're coming up against the hard break, I wrote something beautiful for you after I don't know whether I wrote it before it. I got a little chuckle to myself. I was coming out of the dance club last night, and it was already dusk over in Sausalito, California. And, you know, so many things I want to say at once all of a sudden. There's an area in the Bay Area that I go to. Now, I started my radio career by sending out a demo tape that I recorded on pure spec. No one said do it. No one said, hey, kid, make a demo tape. 1993. I go to a little place called Command Productions in Sausalito, California, in an old shipyard, the old Kaiser shipyards, and it was a sound studio. And I made a demo tape in that studio and sent it out to 400 or so radio station program directors with a list that I purchased from a man that I had met on one of my book tours who gave me the list. And as I say, that little vortex has so much going on for me. It's astounding. There's a boatyard where I bought my first big boat. There's a number of things. I don't remember all of the things, but there's a vortex in that area that's astonishing in that little area. So as I say, I was coming out early, 8 o'clock after. I go early. It starts at 5, and I have enough after an hour or two. It gets too loud for me and this and that. But I got so drawn into the music. The flautist was as good as Jose Fajardo, one of the greats. The timbales play, I said to him in Spanish during the break, I said, tú es el rey de timbal, because he was the king of timbales. It was unbelievable how good these guys were. You have to love the music to understand what I'm saying to you. When music is right, dance music, and not a beat is missed, and it's so compelling, then you're transcended. You're lifted off your feet. Even if you're not dancing, you're lifted out of your body. So you have that for that moment. Without drugs. And so I go out, it's dusk, the stars are up in the sky. It was like one of those where everything is right again. And I wrote a poem called Everyone's a Star Behind Their Car, which I will read to you when I come back on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUYCO. A crowded dance floor with black and Latino men and women. Everyone's a star behind their car. Everyone's a star behind the bar. Everyone's a star from afar, for everyone's slightly marred. The brigadier, the buccaneer, debonair or doctrinaire, the gondolier or the pamphleteer. Everyone's a star from afar. My friends, that's the poem, Everyone's a Star Behind Their Car. Because in a way it ties into the Sandman theme of today's show. Everyone is cool from a distance. I mean, not everyone. I don't mean the women in Marin County and Volvos, Saabs who cut you off from the right lane with Bernie stickers. But aside from them, people get into a pompous state in their cars. We all do it. Prop ourselves up. We put the seat on the highest position if we're short, the lowest position if we're tall. I mean, no one could see your body in a car. So all you see is like a head and the car. The car becomes an extension of your body. That's why everyone buys a new car if they can afford it. And the car says something. That's what the ads are telling you. The ads are giving you an identity with the car. So if you buy like an Outback, whatever that is, I don't even know what it is, you're going on a trip to the mountains, to the Alpine Mountains with your girlfriend to climb in the Alpine. Because no one uses it for that. You go to a schlocky job somewhere and work in a cubicle. But the identity is, in his mind, he's driving in it to the cubicle. He thinks you think that he's on the way to pick up a supermodel to go climbing in the Alps. In his mind, but you're not. You see a Schmendrick in a new little car. It's like the reverse is true too. A guy in a Bentley turbo convertible. What do you see? You see a rich man? No, you see a man who's inadequate inside, who needs to show off. An old guy is trying to show you he's rich. That's another thing in the car. So cars show us stuff. We all do it. That's what I'm trying to get across. Everyone's a star behind the car. Everyone's a star behind the bar. Every bartender's a star. Am I right or wrong? So what does it have to do with politics? Figure it out.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage.
And I can't wait for it to be over, to be honest with you. I hope Trump wins and that's it. Let him get the job done. But this is going to go on now, on and on and on and on and on, with the Wicked Witch of Warwick on the other side hanging in the wings. She should have been arrested a long time ago. You ever did 1/50th of what she did with the emails, you'd be in such a dark holding cell, no amount of lawyers on earth could get you out. Just on the fear that you'd flee the country. But that's because she has NPR in her pocket, because she has, the networks, because she has all of these talking heads in her pocket. They're not asking her about it. Idiots like Anderson Cooper had the nerve to ask Bush last week before the big fall what his favorite music was. I felt bad for Bush. This is not a good, let's put this, I didn't want him to win. Okay. We knew he's a rhino. We knew he's Washington establishment. He's not a bad guy, for God's sakes. He wasn't the devil. He wasn't an evil man, and then you see a guy like that, and he was not the strongest of the brothers, right? The bumbler was probably tougher than him. The bumbler, with the hesitancy, was probably a tougher kid than he was. This guy was like a nice guy, and I know he's going to suffer for this. This is bad. The next thing is, after a loss like this, I'm not saying I wish it doesn't happen, but usually a humiliating loss like this, a disease follows not too long after. I'm sorry. I'm not saying it should happen. The opposite, I hope. But this kind of gut loss is a killer for a man at that age, because it's over. The Bush dynasty's finished, in a way, thank God. Not that they were all bad either, by the way. You could say that they were a corrupt establishment Republicans. It would all be true. But on the other hand, compared to what we got on the other side, when you got the communists waiting on the other side and the Islamists waiting on the other side and the spies they put in everywhere and the deviants everywhere you turn. So, but now we got Trump versus who? Who's going to win? Who knows already? Probably Trump. It looks like Cruz, it's over. He got a good beating in the cage fight the other night. And I've seen fights before, if he couldn't win in South Carolina with the Bible, with the snakes, with the whole holy roller thing, holding up the Constitution like he wrote it, holding up the cross like he was the disciple of Jesus himself, and pledging a chastity that no one could live up to. And he still lost amongst evangelicals. And I figure the next step is even worse. And everyone now, Trump could win. All the doubting Thomases who threw mud at him, now Trump, he could win. That guy could win and go all the way. Oh, yeah. We're all on his side all of a sudden. They put the finger up with the saliva on it, so which way the wind was blowing, now they're all for Trump. They're all lining up. Whether he'll remember me or not, I don't know. What do I want out of it? I don't need anything. At the end of the day, I think about it. I had a dream, I actually went to dinner with him and we talked. I met him once at the club. Brought his wife over. This was like 4 years ago. And I only go there once a year. I haven't been there this year once. I only go to Florida once a year. And every time I go to Mar-a-Lago once. And if he's there, I say hello to him. He says hello to me. So like 2 years ago, he came up with his wife. I said, Mr. Trump, how are you? He says, her name is Melania, right? The beautiful wife? I don't know her name. Is it Melania? Who? I can't pronounce it. Let me say Melania. I'm from the Bronx. Melania. I'm not from Hungary. Melania, whatever. Can we just cut it? Anyway, she's like Jackie Kennedy, incidentally. She is this generation's Jackie Kennedy. Wow, what a first lady she'd make. With that foreign accent, like Zsa Zsa Gabor on top of it all. America would so be in love with her. You can't believe it. I don't want to finish that sentence because you know what the rest of this one is, but there's no sentence that follows that one. The whole family would be a pleasure. We'd be proud again. I mean, this guy can make America great again just by winning with his family. The whole world would start saluting us because of his wife. Are you kidding? Everyone loves style. So the thing is, now also, she came up and he said, oh, Michael Savage, he was with his lovely young son. He was a kid, dressed nice, like in a suit, like an 10-year-old in a suit and tie. I never had a suit. I had a suit, but I never wore it at that age. But where I came from, no one wore suits except if you died, they put you in a box one. But the thing is, none of the men I knew ever wore a suit. A wedding or a funeral, that's the only time the men I knew wore suits. They were immigrants, they worked hard. But the thing is, he says, oh, Melanie, I want you to meet Michael Savage. He's one of the most important men in the media. I thought it was funny. But you see, even from the beginning, he was very complimentary. Maybe he knew he was going to run. And he needed friends in high places. But that's the only time I met him. So I have a dream. I met him and we talked. And I've thought about it. Many people say, a joke. A friend called me up. I hadn't heard from him in a long time. He said, hey, so Mike, when Trump wins, you're going to be made Secretary of State. I laughed. No, not likely. A, number one, no one's asking me. And B, I would not do well in a job like that. That's suit and tie, sitting around. I'd be a good negotiator with them. Because I know most of them are corrupt. I'd look right through them. And I wouldn't let them get away with what they get away with. I don't want a job I don't want a job at all. I have a job. I'm retired, basically. This is my retirement job. I've been doing it for 21 years. It's the hardest thing I ever did in my whole life, talk radio. There's nothing harder on earth. Nothing can compare to this because you're on a verbal tightrope for 3 straight hours. You say one wrong word, you are crucified and you're dead for life. Trust me, I was banned from Britain for something I didn't even say. I just know the stakes are so high. I guess I like it. I love the high wire act. I thrive on it. Ask the guys who work with me. Sometimes at 5 minutes before the hour that it starts, I can hardly move. Sometimes from exhaustion or allergies. Or maybe it's my body playing possum before I strike, like a snake. All I can tell you is that I feel dead. And the minute that I hear that theme song, within a few seconds, it's like an adrenaline's running through my body. Ask him, it's true. And it's a matter of whether I can figure out how to hook you, get you interested, come up with a theme, a question, go into the thing. Here we are already an hour and 12 minutes into it, playing some great music. But the whole election, as I say, seems to be about baiting people, holier than thou, more conservative than thou. Are you now or have you ever been a member of this party? Litmus test. Are you constitutionally correct? Are you a good enough Christian? Mr. Christian? And if you are, well, you're not as chaste as I am. I am a more chaste man than you are. Because I carry around the Bible and I can prove to you I'm better than you are. That's what it is. It's kind of boring at the end of the day. I'd really rather hear about building a wall, crushing ISIS like a cockroach. What I really like to know is if Trump wins, is he going to go and arrest these Obama criminals? Try them? That's what everyone's saying. Will he actually try Obama for the crimes he's committed against this nation? Will he let him get away with it? The answer is he won't touch him. But even Obama has modified his pitch. Do you know that Trump's candidacy has already had an effect upon everything in this country? You don't know that. I do. That's why I'm paid to do a talk show. I see things you can't see until I explain it to you. Then you say, he's right. Even Obama is now suddenly defensive on what a big government liberal maniac he is. I played that speech last hour. No, I'm not a big government liberal. We look at everything and evaluate costs and benefits. Yeah, right. Like your wife's personal assistance, your vacations, your abuse of power. Sure, you have value, right? But even he's suddenly backpedaling. He sees the popularity of Sanders. He sees the popularity of Trump. And he suddenly sees that he is the odd man out and everyone's on to him. Because they're saying, well, will he pay for this? For what he's done to this country, how he's spent us into oblivion, printing money? A $13 trillion debt the last I checked. When he came to power, wasn't it $3 trillion? Now it's $13 trillion. Where'd the money come from? Obama has committed a financial crime. If a hedge fund operator did this, he'd be in jail. If a hedge fund operator ran his books the way Obama's running this country, that hedge fund, you watch a show like Billions. U.S. attorney's going after this hedge fund operator, wants to destroy him because he's jealous. He's an evil man, this U.S. attorney. That's the beauty of the show. It shows you that the government agent is worse than the hedge fund operator, or in the same category. Let's put it to you that way. 855-407-0282 is the Savage Nation. Now we got Nevada tomorrow night. Then Wednesday we got to talk about Nevada. Why do we have to talk about it? They got the clock running it on CNN, like 14 hours left. What are they, crazy? Anderson Cooper went out and got his teeth whitened for the event. So tomorrow in Nevada, what do you think is going to happen? She wins and he wins. Now let's move on. What do we do then? No, Sanders goes where? Where does he go after this? Where does Sanders go now that he served the useful purpose of making Hillary look centrist? What's his next incarnation? I hear they need a deli man at Katz's. I hear the old guy got sick. So you want Bush with the sandwich? Don't tell me what to do. I know how to cut. No, he has a big career ahead of him now, Sanders. You know what kind of lecture circuit he could do? To all the aging hippie communists out there who are living on, like, Social Security, disability, voting in 3 different states under 3 different names, living on their dead husband's Social Security, even though they're not allowed. I mean, Sanders is their hope. And then at the end, it winds down. He does 2-3 years of very big numbers on the circuit. Then eventually he's reduced to the Catskill Mountains, which don't exist anymore, so he goes to the, like, Century Village circuit in Florida. The people who are comatose, but they know that he's like them, so they like him. No, an old guy died across the street from me. Their daughter came up. I don't know. I saw this guy in my neighborhood. He died. It's like people die, you know. Old man walks around. He was, like, shuffling for years. Then she said, "Did you know my father?" I didn't know him. I just would wave to him for 10 years. No, I didn't know him. She said, "Oh, nice man." "Well, he died yesterday." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear it." It's the way of all flesh. That's what I'm saying to you. You know, like, we're all alive. And, like, you know, take a deep breath, boys and girls. Antonin Scalia was whacked as sure as I'm standing here, and you forgot it already. We're a nation of imbeciles. An imbecile nation. Imbecile nation. No autopsy, but you're sure it was natural causes, because one moron that they found told you that. Sure. Mr. Sandman, give me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now. 855-400-SAVAGE. 855-400-7282. Savage.
Your Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust for tangible assets, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICO. I enjoyed myself last night. It's still flowing through my veins. In fact, I'm probably going to take Timbali lessons again. Get a frilly shirt. Because I don't know that I could pass the litmus test anymore the way it's going in talk radio. You know, they're liable to give me the litmus test. Constitution, Christianity, chastity, I'd flunk. If I flunk, I have to go into, like, a dance band or something. But here we are. So tomorrow's Nevada, and then what? What's after that? Do we get a break? A couple of months off? I hope to God we get a long break. Robert, what's after Nevada? Do we get a month off? Nothing? Nothing. There's nothing for no one knows. No one. I mean, when is Super Tuesday? What year? No one knows. I'm in the business of talk radio. I don't know when Super Schmooze Day. To me, Super Schmooze Day is more interesting than Super Tuesday. At least I get to talk to people. Super Tuesday. I think a couple of weeks off after Nevada. And thank God I don't have to do this every day. Day and night, cruise up, cruise down, he's up, he's down, he's this, and Carson can get off the stage already. Nice guy enough already with the mumbling. Bush, thank God, is gone. All right, God bless him. Let him go back to investment banking. He can open a hedge fund. The Bush hedge fund. We move left, we move right. Then we move left again, we move right, we sell short, we sell long, and we take a commission. That's perfect for him, a hedge fund. That's why he was in the business. You know, he was an investment banker, I understand, whatever that means today, investment banker. What does an investment banker mean? People come to them with money? Whose money? Why would they come to him with money? What would he know about where to put money? How could he know where to put money? I go to Donald Trump with money if I had it and ask him what to do with it. I wouldn't go to, that's an interesting question. Which of the candidates would you go to? Let's say you had money, your life savings, and you decided to invest it. All of them are investment bankers or hedge fund operators. Which one of them would you give the money to? Let's start from the top. Bernie Sanders? Yeah, right. He would steal it immediately and say you didn't earn it. It's not yours. Would you give it to Hillary Clinton? She'd say, what difference does it make anyways? The money disappears into the Clinton Foundation. Then the Republicans side. Let's go down the Republican side. Okay, we got Carson. No, thank you. I don't think he'd know where to put the money. Who else is left? I don't even know who was on stage. Who's that guy? Kasich? I think he's worth $12. He has one suit from 1973. It's like a Dodge Dart, that guy. It was enough for me last week when he said, I'm on the side of the Pope, not Trump. Finish. Goodbye. Wouldn't give him the money. So who's left? Who's up there? I don't even know who's left anymore. Ted Cruz? Dracula, I wouldn't give any money to. I wouldn't give Dracula the money. I just don't trust him. There's a sneak factor to him. Remember they said about Nixon? He had like a sneaky look. He always had sweat on his upper lip. Like cost him big time in the TV thing with the Checker speech with the dog. It's telegenic. Cruz is not telegenic. He's got those shady eyes. I don't care how cool he is on the Constitution, Christianity, and chastity. He can't win, man. Vampire. That's it. End of story. I'll be back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. Savage.
I'm looking to take a vacation, so I gotta... Wait a minute, stop the music. This Tuesday is Nevada, of course. We know already the outcome. Since Super Tuesday is the next Tuesday, March 1. Again, I got to sit with biting my nails. Then what? Is it over? She wraps it up through corruption. He wraps it up through charisma. Then we get a break till Election Day, or there's more? Oh, the conventions. Pardon me. Oh, no, the balloons and the thing. The idiots from around the country with the straw hats and the flags. We got to put up with that for about a month in August, don't we? The conventions. Oh, my God. I hope to God Trump doesn't ask me to appear at any point. I can't be around these people. They're toxic. Ever since I saw him, even before Manchurian Candidate, I can't take it. The hysteria, the madness. And the men are worse than the women, the hysteria. There's like a certain, almost like a mating madness in those auditoriums. They're in heat. They're crazy. Balloons and flags and pizza and custard. And what are they so involved with this for? I ask myself, well, whatever. Look, to each his own. If that gets you, as they say, if it floats your boat, they used to say, whatever the era was for that. I think that's dead already. Whatever floats your boat. That's dead, isn't it? No one uses that in this generation. The things they say, probably so dirty, I'd be at my face with, no one says whatever floats your boat. In Clinton's generation, it was, if it feels good, why not do it in the road? That was what Clinton grew up on. At least he's true to his principles. If it feels good, do it. I mean, at least Bill's true to himself. That's what he grew up on. If it feels good, do it. Why not do it in the road? At least he's true to his principles. That's all. So that's the chastity part. We don't hear about that anymore. Right? That was a big issue in the last election. The sexual thing. No, not a mention, not a whiff. You can't ask a thing. Who does this, what, doesn't matter. The new mantra is, doesn't matter, I don't care. They do care. It's like, say, he's saying, no, I don't care what he does. As long as it doesn't bother me, it's fine. That's not what they mean. That's the mantra, though. That's fine. Whatever he does is fine. They don't mean that. People still have feelings about those areas. There's no question about it. But it's not come up in this election is the point. There's no sexual litmus test at all anywhere along the line on this one. It's all this Christianity, chastity, and the Constitution. And whether you pass the litmus test on those. And they're important, I guess. But to me, crushing ISIS and balancing the budget seems to be important, too. Like, what's your order of priority? Build a wall. He keeps saying the same thing, Donald Trump. What's your priority? We'll build that wall right after he won. We'll build that wall. It'll be a high wall, and they'll pay for it. And all the doubting Thomas, no, they're not going to pay for it. Yes, they will. You can make them pay for it real easy. Believe me, you can make Mexico pay for it real easily. But, will the wall get built? Sure, it's not hard to build a wall. Israel did it. Worked for them. When have you last seen a suicide bombing in Israel? Never. Remember the same liberals? How dare the Israelis build a wall to keep out those innocent Palestinians? who only want to blow their children up in a pizzeria. What is wrong with those evil Nazi-like Israelis who want to live? How dare they? A good Jew is a dead Jew. That's the liberal mantra. The only good Jew is a dead Jew. Then they love you, wrapped up in a prayer shawl, being dropped in a hole in a pine box. So the Israelis had enough of the Palestinians bombing their children in a pizzeria. So they put up a wall. Do you remember the screaming about the wall? Don't build a wall. It's a throwback. Don't build a wall. It's like Germany. No. Tear down that wall. No, they built a wall. No bombing. So once we have a wall, a lot of things happen in America. Drug dealing diminishes. The inflow of drugs dries up. It squeezes off supply. Illegal aliens, they'll go somewhere else. I don't know, maybe they'll want to go to Honduras or... You think the Mexicans will want to emigrate to Guatemala? I don't think so. You think they'll want to emigrate to Honduras? I don't think so. Think they're going to want to go to Panama through the Isthmus? I don't think so. You think they're going to emigrate to South America? I don't think so. There's only one place where there's the Horn of Plenty. That's up here. So, my friends, this is the Savage Nation, in case you don't know what we're listening to. Jeb Bush is finished. $130 million down the toilet. But plenty of people made money. Come on. They probably still have plenty of it. The consultant who ran the whole big pack, I was told this 2 years ago, took a $14 million payday off the money he raked in. It's a percentage. It's like an agent. If you raise $100 million from a super PAC, you take whatever percent you can negotiate. Apparently, he did 14%. They spent $94,000 on clubs. Bush did. Where'd they go? Dinner and event tabs at the Yale Club, the Union League Club of Chicago, Nantucket's Westmore Club. Clubs I never even heard of, let alone that wouldn't let me in. I never heard of them. That's how exclusive they are. They are so country club. They are so check pants Republican, right-wing fascist Nazi types, sneering Nazi types, that I never even heard of them. I never heard of the Yale Club. Today, I guarantee the Yale Club, you can imagine what's in the Yale Club. Obama went to Yale, just shows you what the Yale Club is worth. Hillary went to the Yale, imagine what that club is worth. I would imagine, well, it's a family show, sorry. The Union League Club of Chicago. It's like old, mainline. Sounds like half of them do mainline in the Union League. Sorry. Mainline. You think that's just the junkies in the street? Nantucket's Westmore Club. That's a place that wouldn't even let me through the gates, the Nantucket's Westmore Club. And two other haunts of the well-heeled and racquetball inclined. I don't play racquetball. What do you mean well-heeled? Everyone has good heels today. Shoes are cheap. You go to Zapatos, you can have new shoes for very little money. So the Bush campaign spent $15,800 on valets. That's okay. They spent advertising $84 million, as you'd expect. That went through friends in the advertising business. They spent Vegas $48,000 at certain hotels. The Bellagio, the Wynn, and the Venetian, owned by Sheldon Adelson. The Republican Mecca donor. I wonder why they picked his hotel. Consultants, $10 million. Right. Consultants. Idiots. Same consultants who destroyed Romney are now advising people. I'm warning them. The day Trump hires these morons, the day his campaign goes off the rails, it's coming any day now. I can guarantee, they all hate me. I'm the original Borders language culture guy, see, so they can't love me. Pizza, $4,800. Always pizza. Domino's are from Pizza Ranch in Iowa. It's cheap, $4,800 for pizza. They all look like doughboys. They look like him. But it can't be fun around the Bush Ranch now. He's going to get spanked verbally because the family's finished in the political world. Father, CIA, president. Son won, president twice, I think. Was he president twice? I don't even remember anymore. The good old days. Yeah, twice. We had him for how long? We had Bush Jr. for 8 years, right, 8 years, right. Thank God of the FDR thing. He'd still be president probably. Reagan would still be president if we didn't have term limits. With the bullet in him, he would have lived another 20 years. Nancy would be running the country. It wouldn't be so bad. Nice lady. I ran into her once in Beverly Hills outside a store. Oh, you're Michael Savage. I listen to these show. Secret Service guys looked at me like leery-eyed. They liked me, but they were afraid to say they liked me because she may not like me as much as she pretended to like me. I don't know why. You can't tell what people mean. But here we are. It's Monday. You're not that interested in any of this stuff. What's this news? Mayor wants safe space for heroin users. Where, in Congress? Ithaca mayor wants to let heroin users shoot up under nurse supervision. The nurse is probably high. Shoot up under the care of a nurse, you hear? Ithaca Mayor Svante Merrick said that the junkie facility, which will also connect addicts to recovery, is one piece of a new approach he wants the city to take against the scourge of addiction. There's a real cure for addiction. Want to hear the cure? Build a wall, stop the flow of drugs, and make drug dealing a death sentence with one appeal. That'll dry up the supply. I'm sick and tired of hearing about treatment. If it really worked, they wouldn't go in and out of treatment. They go, they spend. It's a sad thing. Look, no one's laughing at addicts. You can get addicted from an injury. You could have a spinal thing and need Oxy. I told you the answer is stop making OxyContin to start with. They should arrest the owners of the company that make that stuff. It's the most toxic drug ever invented. Do I have to tell you the story again? Because I know a little bit pharmacology, my years in pharmacology. There was such a severe addiction to morphine at the turn of the last century. People were knocking it down in every form imaginable. Tinctures, morphine. They relaxed people. 1880, 90, 1905. They were giving it to babies in a tincture. Baby cried, give it morphine. Baby was hurting from teething. They rubbed morphine on the gum. Quieted the baby down. Turned her into a junkie, but okay, it worked. That way mommy can get some rest. Just give the baby some morphine, she'll be fine. They didn't call it morphine then. They called it, they had names for it. Tincture this, tincture that. Little baby stop crying formula. Shut the kid up formula. But they used it on infants. They didn't know it was bad. It worked. See, in those days, they didn't have like a moral thing around. It's like, oh, that stuff works. The baby stopped crying. And that stuff works. All of my itises went away. My feet don't hurt. My hands don't hurt. I feel better. Let's use that stuff. It's great. Woo. Terrific stuff, that morphine. So there was so much addiction for morphine that it became a public outcry, like stop the morphine addiction. So they went to the geniuses in the chemistry area, and they said, well, can you invent something that will get them off morphine? Yeah, don't worry about it. We'll come up with it. Into the lab they go, test tubes, Frankenstein, lab equipment. Here it is, the magical formula. You see, we took morphine, and we added 2 acetyl groups to the morphine molecule. We have 3,6-diacetyl morphine. I don't know what it is, but it works, right? Yeah. It's called heroin. That's how heroin was made. So that, you know the story of heroin. So now heroin's so addictive that they come up with the next one. Methadone, worse than heroin. Now they come across, now they invent OxyContin, worse than methadone and heroin put together. Addicting an entire generation. So who's responsible for it? Hello, cash register, bottom line. Who makes it? Look up the company that makes it. If you had a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, don't you think that they would have stopped the manufacture of Oxy and made the manufacture of it illicitly punishable by the death penalty? End of story, no appeals. One appeal and you're going to jail for life or you're going to be executed if you make that stuff. It's killing our children. So the government don't care. They're looking the other way. They get a payoff and a campaign donation. They get a vacation at a resort in Texas, 300 miles from the border, where there's no phones and no coroners, you know. And if they don't play ball, they have a heart attack in the bed as a result of a pillow that fell down. We don't know where the pillow, like a fairy pillow. It was under his head. It was over his head first. It was on his face. I didn't mean it was on his head. It was on the headboard. I didn't mean his head. Oh, I see, sir. Can you explain that again to the American people? They're a little concerned that you reported that Justice Scalia was found with a pillow over his face. Okay, no, he was found with a pillow on the headboard, not on his head. Oh, headboard, not head. See that? See, idiots? See, morons? You jumped at the conspiracy theory because you listened to those shows. It was on the headboard, not on his head. Anderson, what do you have to say? I have to say this. Mr. Bush, what's your favorite music? And on we go. Oh, then it's ski week. On to ski vacation last week. There's like ghost town in the suburbs in California. You couldn't see a white person. You didn't see a white person under 5,000 feet unless they had a regular job. The children were off the streets. It was unbelievable. Not a child was seen. It's like all day was skiing. Everybody was skiing for a week. I think they're back in school already, thank God. What do they do for a whole week up there? God, it's over, the ski week. They're going to learn something this year. Maybe they'll learn something by July 4th. They'll learn what a peninsula is. In the 12th grade, that is. This state used to be number one in everything education-wise. It's one of the reasons I loved living here when I was poor. I came here in 74. I didn't have much money. I was a grad student. I 74, then I had one child, and I had two later on. And I felt good. I knew that they could go to college for free. And I knew the University of California system was the best in the country. It had such high ratings, so many Nobel Prize winners. And I said, you know what? I'm going to leave it up to my kids to be what they want. They can go to the Cal system, University of California, or the state system. Either one's fine. Both of my kids went to the Cal State system. They both did very well because they worked hard. And I figured, let them send themselves through college. You know, I paid for the room and board and tuition, but I didn't have to, it wasn't very low. Whatever, it wasn't out of town school, like 30 grand to learn how to score coke in a ghetto. They didn't get that benefit. And then go on into a government job or work for a Wall Street corporation where they met somebody from General Motors, finance corporation, sub-finance corporation. But I'm saying, used to be number one. Then what happened? Take a look at it now. Look at the sad sack system now. Look at what Jerry Brown has allowed to happen to our once pristine educational system. Look how many days the kids are not in school. Look at the idiotic courses that they pass as college courses. Take a look at the idiots they let create departments for themselves. They're not smart enough to teach a regular department. They create a whole study about themselves. And they give each other like scholarly papers. I love how they use scholarly terms to describe their courses. A rigorous investigative approach to the expense of fungal nail polish. I'll be back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth with gold and silver. Call 800-BUICO. It is the Savage Nation. Now, today's theme, I have to spell it out for you, is Trump, you're in a Sandman. That's what I said 2 hours ago. I cannot believe 2 hours went by already without a single call. I didn't take a call because I started out tired from the allergies killing me. And within a few seconds, the adrenaline and the sheer joy of walking on the tightrope and doing what I do, the way I do it, so enervated me that it's almost 2 hours into the show already. How is this possible? Well, whatever. So we're talking about is Trump, you're in a Sandman. I warned you that Obama was you're in a Sandman. And look what happened with him. So no one's going to be you're in a Sandman. You better find your own in a Sandman. Hey, that's a good book title. I just gave it away, another bestseller. Other people wrote it down. They were sent off proposals already before I finished. They call an agent. Hello, how are you, John? Listen, I have an idea for a book about Sandmen inside. Really? Put something together, a couple of paragraphs. I'll get you $200,000 for that one. I got to be careful because I give out too many things for nothing on the Savage Nation. Well, look, these hours are gone. There's another big hour. Sorry you don't get it in your market. If you don't, I can't help you. I can only do what I do. All the news, views, and reviews you've come to expect from Michael Savage. In the next hour, we will talk about, was Scalia murdered? And is Apple right or the FBI right? Right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Can anyone fall in love in this cynical world? I don't know. I don't know anymore. What a world. I'm sure. Come on, people are born, they go through the same cycle. I have a granddaughter, she's 2 years old. What an innocent, beautiful person. I look at her and I wonder what kind of world she's going to live in. I say to myself, man, you better do everything you can. You better work real hard. You better work real hard to make sure that the Witch of Warwick doesn't win. Now that Bernie the Stooge is out of the box. Welcome to the Savage Nation. Just thinking out loud a little bit. If you just joined the show, I pity you because you missed everything that was good. The rest is we're going to do a lot of calls in this hour. News, views, reviews. saw an interesting article that I'm going to read about now, talk with you about. China is buying up American companies fast, and it's freaking people out. Business Insider, Porsche Crow, they're buying up everything because we have a sick country run by criminals who should stop these sales, by the way. This should be against the law. You know, Canada does not permit foreigners to buy more than 20 acres of land, of wheat land. Do you know that? About 5 years ago, I looked into buying farmland in Canada. And as an American, I can only buy 20 acres. China's coming and buying 10,000 acres of our wheat, 20,000 acres of our corn, 100,000 acres of our soybeans. What kind of nation permits this when it's run by gangsters and criminals and lobbyists and lawyers who are the worst of all of them? You know what they're buying? They want to buy the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Did you hear any of this? General Electric sold its appliance business to a Chinese company. ChemChina's record-breaking deal for the Swiss seeds and pesticide group, Syngenta, valued at $48 billion. You think they're stupid? They're buying our farmland. They're buying our seeds. They're buying our pesticides. In other words, they can starve us to death. And Obama's for you, though. Don't worry about that, man. He's watching the store. In between hole 3 and 4, he's watching the store. See, I hope if Trump becomes president, he kicks them out of our country, doesn't let them do this. He's, you bought the company, now take a walk, and we're keeping the money, and you don't own it. That's all. Goodbye. Go back where you came from. Are you kidding me? They're buying up our whole infrastructure here. Most recently, a unit of the Chinese conglomerate H&A Group said it would buy the technology distributor Ingram Micro for $6 billion. Chicago Stock Exchange going to another Chinese company. 102 Chinese mergers and acquisitions deals amounting to $81 billion in value. That's up from 72 deals worth $11 billion in the same period last year. Why are they doing it? Because it's slow economic growth in China, cheap prices abroad, not so much due to the stock market's recent sell-off, but because the Chinese are manipulating their currency, just like Donald Trump says. They're manipulating their currency, and now they're using that to come in and buy up our entire nation. So the operators, with the slowdown of the economy, Chinese corporates are increasingly looking to inorganic avenues to supplement their growth. What kind of nonsense is that? Only a sick nation sells off its infrastructure. So now they want to buy the stock exchange. That's really great. Let them invest now, and they can have access to the $2 trillion U.S. equity marketplace, just what the doctor ordered. That's all. So we have a group called CFIUS, C-F-I-U-S. Any company that has anything to do with national security has to go through this group. Yeah, right. Yeah, there's some group that is. I wonder if you could pay them off. You can imagine what you can get through them. CFIUS. Oh, sorry, I can make a joke about that. Early this week, California-based Fairchild Semiconductor refused an offer from the state-backed China Resources and Capital, the Financial Times reported. They bid $2.6 billion for the company, but Fairchild turned it down, citing concerns about U.S. regulators, and accepted a lower bid from U.S.-based rival. Good for them. They didn't do it out of patriotism, I guarantee you. It's because they knew that the deal with the U.S.-based company would go through, while the one with China would be scrutinized. Well, it should be. The deals are awesome. You can't talk about it because it's too big. You can't do anything about it. That's why you're not calling on it, 855-407. What can you say about that? Nothing. What can you say? Nothing. If I asked you whether you like chocolate ice cream better or vanilla, the lines would light up. That you can answer. Now, it's not that there's something wrong with you. What can you say about China buying companies? Nothing. What could you say about Mark Zuckerberg worth $48 billion wearing an undershirt? Is that a sartorial statement or an example of stupidity? What is he doing that for? To show how powerful he is? Naturally, he came down on the side of his buddies at Apple. They're all one and the same. I told you they need to be broken up. I told you any new president's got to break them up. Bust the trust. I'm sorry, they're too big. They're too big for the sake of the average American. Apple needs to be broken up. You name the number one competitor to Apple. Go ahead. Name the number one competitor to Facebook. Tell me what market share they have. Name the number one competitor to Google. Tell me the market share they have, the next search engine. You can't. Name the next competitor, the number two competitor to Microsoft. You can't. Tell me what percent of the market they own. By any definition, each of these companies, in my estimation, is running a monopoly. And there used to be antitrust violations in this country. There was a vigorous Justice Department that was interested in more than racial harassment. And the Justice Department used to prevent companies from growing too big because they knew it's the stifled competition. And the whole lifeblood of capitalism is competition, isn't it? These are not capitalist countries. These are not capitalist countries by definition. They are entities unto themselves. They're nations unto themselves. Facebook's revenue is bigger than most nations. Google's revenue is bigger than most nations. Certainly Microsoft's revenue is bigger than most nations in Europe, let's say. Let's put it to you that way. And what taxes do they pay? They pay the fair share? They pay what you pay? No, they don't pay what you pay. They got triple Dutch, quadruple Irish methodologies that were created for them by former IRS lawyers working for these giants, and they pay as little as they possibly can. They get around the law, in other words. They need to be broken up for the sake of competition if you want true capitalism. How could you argue with that? And yet I know what's going to happen. I can get someone like a purist calling me, "No, Mike, this is the marketplace talking. It's the free market. You should let Google become as big as it wishes. It's the free market speaking." That's stupid. That's idiotic. It's the same kind of purist stupidity that you get out of a textbook. There's a reason for antitrust legislation. And you could see it with Apple. When you have a guy like Tim Cook think he's above the law. Now, I know all of the sides of this argument. There's arguments on both sides. And as I showed you last week, there was a hacker who created a way to do it for this one phone that would not give the government extraordinary powers over your phone or anyone else's phone, because the technology that would be created for that one phone owned by the Muslim terrorists that they want to break into would be used once and then it would be destroyed. No possible way the same solution would work on any other device, according to the hacker. Create a RAM disk, signed by the company's production certificate for the specific ECID of the suspect's phone, and that would allow Apple to use existing technologies in the firmware file format to grant access to the phone, ensuring that there is no possible way the same solution would work on another device. I understand it's not foolproof, but it's pretty close to foolproof, and we'd find out who Farouk, whatever, was talking to after he murdered all those people in San Bernardino, him and the old lady with the burqa on, the burqa couple, the burqa twins. Find out who the burqa twins were talking to, man. We need to know. I want to know who they were talking to. And what worries me here is that if Apple and Microsoft and Google are lining up together, all of a sudden they're holy, we're protecting the American people. No, that's not true. Because Apple has allowed the government to go into the phone 70 times in the past. So they're hiding something. There's something in that phone that they already know. If they have the key to it. See, if the government's going to Apple and say, hey, make a key for us, it means Apple has the key already. And they went into the phone. They already looked in the phone. Let's run that theory by. Put on your fiction writer's hat with me. So someone at Apple already made that encryption key, broke the encryption, looked in the phone and said, oh, my God, Mark, look at who they were talking to, Mark. This is no good, Mark, because it goes all the way up to the people we know in the government, Mark. One theory, one fictional theory. It's a complete and total, you have to forgive me, part-time fiction writer, 3 New York Times bestsellers in a row. You forgot the titles already, but some of you love my writing. I haven't done one. I'm not going to do another one. It's all going to be different kind of stuff. A Time for War, Countdown to Mecca, and Abuse of Power. The Jack Hatfield series is gone. It's kaput. He's dead. Jack died. I didn't kill Jack off yet, but I'm not interested in him anymore. He's dead to me. But if I were writing a novel, that's what it would be. Like, Mark, we open the phone. Take a guess who he was talking to. Who? Excuse me, I'm in Bloomingdale's now buying an undershirt. He was talking to, fill in the blank. All right, put up some story. Get Tim to put out a story that it's for, we don't want anyone with the back door. What else? Mark, hold on a minute. You want the red or the crimson? I'll take 2 reds and 3 crimson. Thank. Have Timmy put out with the PR department a story that we don't want the FBI getting in because we want to protect the privacy, blah, blah, blah. You get it. Okay. That's a pink one too. Get the pink one for those wild nights. Yeah, that's the story. Get the PR department to put that out. That we're doing it for this security, this privacy of the American people. That's right. No, 2 pink, not 1. Yeah, throw in 2 pink. Yeah, that's it. That's the one we'll do. That's the fiction story. Can't follow it. I don't think the audience is into me. I don't get it. I think they want to hear the 3 C's. They want to hear the litmus test every day. Chastity, Christianity, the Constitution. Stick to the facts, Mike. Don't be too creative. We're not interested in it. You're going off the rails again. Too much music, too much of that Latin stuff. We don't like Spanish. We want that wall. We never want to hear the language again. No Spanish on your show, please. English only. Don't play any of that Spanish jive music for us. We're strict constitutionalists. That's it. We're very, very rigid, strict constitutionalists. We don't hear any of that Spanish stuff on your show. No drum playing, no music. Settle down there, Mike. Stick to what you know. Just be a good conservative boy now. Get in line. Get in line. Be one of those good old conservative boys. Just preach the Blarney every day. Preach the old Blarney. Step right up. Step right up to the conservative Blarney show. Constitutions, Christianity, and chastity. Step right up. You know what? I decided I'm going to be me. If I'm in one of my moods like I am today, I'm going to be me. I'm going to play music. I'm going to play the drums on air, which I did. I'm going to sing on air, which I did. You missed it all. I'm going to tell you about a dance I went to last night. I'm going to play sweet music that's dead. What do you want me to do? Every day the same thing? 3 hours a day, you can go brain dead from it. Or if you're born with no brains, you could do it 3 hours a day for 30 years. It doesn't matter. The same thing, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. Why them Democrats? I tell you, they're no good. Now, for years it was, why them Republicans are the only lifesaver for America. Why the only hope for America is them Bushes. I guarantee I went to the White House. I went golfing with them. They're the most wonderful people on earth. Speed forward. No, you don't trust them Republicans. No way do you trust them. Why I throw that Boehner in the river? You can listen to this now. More baloney. So that's why I'd rather not do that. You mind? Okay, that opens it up to a call. After 2 hours and 15 minutes, I have not, this is a world record. Robert, it's a world record today. I have not taken a single phone call in 2 hours and 15 minutes of radio. And I started out exhausted from the allergies. I'm flying right now on adrenaline and calamari and French fries and gherkins. I'll be back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust to protect my wealth. Call 800-BUY-CO. $1.9 billion requested by the fool on a hill to combat the spread of the Zika virus in Latin America. You believe this? This guy has no limits to his hubris and his madness. He knows that he's out of control, and he knows finally the country has taken a turn against him by the popularity of Sanders and the popularity of Trump. That clown in the White House had the nerve to say he's not just a big government crazy liberal, because he knows that everyone knows that's what he is. But worse, listen to this, clip 19 on the Savage Nation. Listen carefully to the clown on the hill.
We have been very stringent and very tight, and our numbers all check out when it comes to the costs and the benefits that we apply to these tests. Even on some of the big regulations you hear about that you don't like,
right?
They're not issued unless the benefits substantially outweigh the costs. And we have the numbers to prove it. So for those of you who think that I'm just a big government crazy liberal, we're actually we've crunched some numbers around here. We take it very seriously.
All right, so the clown on the hill wants us to believe, because he honked his horn, that he doesn't spend any money, even though it's $13 trillion debt. He inherited like $1 trillion, now it's $13 trillion, printing money to keep the fools in line. He says we don't spend the money unless the benefits outweigh the costs. Mr. Obama, 72 personal assistants for the First Lady. Do the benefits outweigh the cost to the American people? No, but the benefits outweigh the cost to her, your wife. Okay, so I see that. You mean the benefits to you and your family. I get it. The use of Air Force One, the abuse of Air Force One, the abuse of Air Force Two, the endless vacations, the golf trips. I see the benefits to you outweigh the cost to the American people. Oh, I'm sorry. Take it back. You meant the benefits to you and your family, not to the American people. Got it. Now I understand. So now he wants $1.9 billion to combat the spread of the Zika virus in Latin America. What do you think that money's going to go for? If you read Diseases Without Borders, my bestseller that only came out a week ago, went right to the top of the list, the ebook. What am I saying? What you do is you stop the travel from the countries where Zika is now endemic, where it's out of control, where it's growing. Just slam it shut already. Stop with the idiocy. That's the first rule of epidemiology. Cut it off. You don't let sick people come into the country to spread a disease unless you yourself are sick or hate the country. But, okay, no, it needs money now. The liberal answer to everything. Just throw money at the problem. Don't close the border to these countries. Just throw money at the problem. Then let it go from 13 billion to 15 billion overnight. Ka-ching, Mr. Obama. With a drumstick. I need a little rhythm back in my life. You know, this is very two-dimensional radio. I've got to tell you the truth. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful expression up to a point, but it's two-dimensional. You can't see my paintings. You can't, well, you know, if it's not verbal, how do you know what I'm doing? I want you to think about that. You know, you watch a movie. Look at all the dimensions that can be put together in a movie, and then you look at what always impresses me is everyone thinks that they can do talk radio, which they can't. And there's not a person out there who doesn't think that they couldn't direct or produce a movie, which they can't. You look at the end of a movie, you see like 300 names. All the things that the people do to make that thing happen, whether it's a good TV show, all of the highly skilled individuals who make a television show work. You know, and you think about, oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, just give me that camera and I'll be a director. No, you can't be a director. You can't be a talk show host. It's the same thing. Either you're good at something or you're not. And if you've listened to the show, you know that sometimes I get frustrated by the dimensions of the show, meaning there are limitations to it. I can only do certain things in radio. It's all about voice, but there's no other expression permitted. And I want to express myself in other ways. Is what I can almost feel myself breaking out of my own limitations right in front of the audience. I don't know where it's going to lead. I don't know. I'm a guy who just is always inventing stuff and creating stuff. So I read you a poem today. I played a drum on the air. I sang on the air. I ate a sandwich on the air. You weren't supposed to hear the sandwich, but I can't help it. I'm a human being, 3 hours a day, and at this time of day I'm not supposed to eat. So thus far, we've talked about who is your inner Sandman. And I said, Rubio is Edelman's. Cruz looks like a vampire. Cruz thinks Duck Dynasty would be a good ambassador. That tells you everything you need to know about him. Then I said, all politicians will disappoint you. Nobody can give you 100%. Stop being a purist. Purists don't win in the real world. Blood in the water. Pope calls for worldwide ban on death penalty. When was he ever a pope? Israel snubs Sanders' outreach because they know that he's not their Sandman. He's a socialist, and they reject socialism because they know it creates racism. That's what the Israelis say. But I said, at least Sanders offers some change, and that's why Obama's changing his tune about, I'm not just a big government crazy liberal. And then I said, Trump is a verbal cage fighter. He's blaying everyone around him in the cage, which is why we like him. America likes a winner. And we want to see him vanquish our enemies. We want to see our enemies bleeding in the cage and dragged off on a stretcher. Period. End of story. All of the foreign nations that are bad-mouthing us, the Chinese ripping us off, the Mexican government ripping us off. We'd like to see them taken out of the cage is what we want to see, and he's saying he can do it. And then I said something I think, and I agree with it to this minute. I said the Republican campaign to date seems to have been Cruz baiting everyone with the holier than thou campaign, that he's more conservative than this one, more conservative than that one. You know, j'accuse is like communism. I accuse you, Mr. Trump, of not being a pure enough conservative. I ask you to stand before the American people and prove definitively that you are, in fact, and you will take that conservative loyalty oath right now in front of me, Ted Cruz. And here is the U.S. Constitution. I want you to swear the Bible and the Constitution that you love the Constitution with all your heart, more than you love Melania, and that you are truly a Christian, and you are a chaste man, just like me, Ted Cruz. Vote for me, because I am the 3 C's. That's what we're hearing now. And I object to it. I'm sick of it. That's what I'm trying to tell you is going on. So that's what you missed so far. The phone number here is 855-497-282. I haven't taken a call yet, 2 hours and 35 minutes into the show. This is actually a world record for me. You know, people use, you don't understand about talk radio, what it is. It's a little secret. Should I tell everyone? I got to be very careful here. No, don't tell them why. No, don't tell them what callers really are to the, what do I care? You know, it's too far into my career to care. Why hold anything back? A caller is a record. We're like disc jockeys. I know most won't tell you that. Every talk show thinks he could be president, but it's like everyone thinks they can produce a movie or they can do talk radio. But, you know, they're not the president. We're talkers, so you have to have an entertainment factor, an education factor, and then something else, right? Callers are to talk radio what records are to a disc jockey. And sometimes the records are good and sometimes they're bad, and people criticize me and say, oh, you cut callers off. Well, the guy's hemming and hawing, and he shouldn't have gotten on to begin with. Mike, I'm in the Bronx. This morning, last guy, my uncle had a pickle just like your uncle had a pickle. Bingo. He shouldn't have gotten on. What do you want to do, talk to him? I hang up on him. I'm not being rude. I don't want to hear any more of that. You don't know me. I'm not your friend. We're not friends. I see that's the problem. I'm too familiar. People listen to the show. They think it's like a party line. They think they're talking to a friend. Okay, I want to be your friend up to a point, but I'm not. I'm not your friend. And the thing is, it gets too familiar for the average listener to listen to it. So I hang up if it's boring to me because I know it's boring to you. And the audience is very fickle. The audiences to radio is fickle, like everything. It's click, 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 turn, turn, turn. Like on television. Look, you sit with a clicker in front of a TV, right? Click, click, click. What do you think they're doing in radio? Click, 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 click. They're clicking. It's a clicked. Everyone's clicking. Used to cluck, now they're clicking. If it clicks like a duck, it's a clicker. Whatever. The point is that I got to keep the show moving. So the most important thing is that I enjoy it. The day I start not enjoying my show is I'm out of business. You can tell when someone's calling it in or they're bored. The minute you hear the same thing over and over again all day long, you know already what you're getting. So if I have to entertain myself, I will. I'm like a monkey in a cage sometimes. I have to play drums. I have to eat on the air. Whatever I have to do to keep my energy and spirits up. Oh, the stick just fell on the floor. That actually happened now. The stick from the timbales fell on the floor. I keep a set of timbales here in the studio. Sometimes I play during breaks to keep myself up. So, here's the news. Oh, and a poem I gave you today, all for the price of nothing. You paid nothing for the show. Everyone's a star behind their car. Did you hear that brilliant poem? No one, not a word. That's why I didn't take a call. They only want to talk about topics like that they could read on the internet. I read you a poem. I wrote it from my guts. No one heard it. No one cares what I do. This is the problem. I could speak in 8 languages on I could speak in Latin. I could read the Bible in Latin and no one would care. I get a call. Mike, I want to say to this about Ted Cruz. You know, the fact is he's the only one who really knows the country. That's what I'm going to get any. So that's why I'm not taking callers. Because I don't want to go back to the single dimension radio show. I could read the Holy Catechism in Latin. Nobody would call. I write a poem from my heart, the most brilliant poem you heard all day. Everyone's a star behind their car. Everyone's a star behind the car. Everyone's a star from afar. Because everyone's marred. Everyone's slightly marred. The brigadier, the buccaneer, debonair or doctrinaire, the gondolier or the pamphleteer. Everyone's a star from afar. And I was trying to make a point with it. 0, no call. Because it's too esoteric. Maybe that's my problem, is I'm too esoteric for this medium. I think that radio has changed. I think the audience in America has changed as a result of a number of factors. A lot of people have tuned out. Now they're tuning in, and all they want to hear is, what are the results in Poughkeepsie? What do they need a radio show to tell them what the results are in Poughkeepsie? You can get it on the Drudge Report in 2 seconds. So you got to get something different from me than what you can get off the internet. Isn't that the object of radio? And the day we become, there used to be a time that radio was unique and it was different from the internet. Now, if all we're doing is repeating what you can read on the Drudge Report, what are you listening to us for? Therefore, enter Michael Savage. I've got to do what I do, and I've got to broaden my show the way I used to do. I want to go back to what I used to do. I'm so tired of politics. I could start smashing things into the monitor. I'm tired of it. And if I'm bored of it, how many times can you hear the same thing over and over again? Trump won. Oh, you didn't know that Saturday night? You already saw. You turned it on for 2 seconds, bleary-eyed. There he was. There's Melania again. How are you? Jackie Kennedy, how you doing? The children, the daughters, I love them. Let's get the election over with already. Let them go into the White House, see what furniture was stolen. See what they can find on the way out. Why do the Democrats always steal furniture? Did they ever find what Hillary Clinton took? Remember that big story when they left? I think took ashtrays and stuff. I don't know what was that big scandal? Forget about it, but they cleaned it out. They took all the good stuff. They took the china. They sold it on eBay. What if you pick it up one day? It's genuine White House porcelain. White House tablecloth with a monogram from the White House, from the East Room, the West Room, the North Room, the South Room. We got sheets from the Truman Room. We got pillowcases from the FDR Room. All the linen from the other room was burned after this administration because no one knows who was in there. We got the room where Al Sharpton slept. They had to fumigate the room. They had to burn the room to the ground. They took it down to the studs after he slept there. Trump comes in. He's got to take the White House down to the studs. Sorry. I'm sorry. That was very funny. No, I just am like, I'm into house renovation, like a little thing, and I should like a house. Some house you have to take down to the studs. You don't know what's coming next time. So here I am. Is anyone enjoying this show? Robert, I don't know. See, it's the problem with not a live audience. If I was in a live audience and I'm looking at you and I say smiling people, yeah, go on, Mike, right on, to see their faces. But in radios, I'm staring at two guys in Dallas, a board operator named Robert Borowski, nice young man, and I see the back of his head, Jim Verde's head. The back of his head, he's looking at stock quotations on his screen. He thinks I don't know that he's not working on the show. But then I see graphs he's looking at. He must have a big investment portfolio. Instead of looking for stories and sound, he's always like, how was investment? I'm joking, come on. It's good natured. I only see two people. Dog's not with me, it's Monday. Monday is hair day. Twice a week he goes to Irene the groomer. Monday, Friday. You know what kind of money I spend on hair for that dog? So, oh, he's nice, man. It must cost you a lot to take care of that poodle. He looks like a little bear. I said, yeah, he goes to the groomer twice a week. The women get jealous. Twice a week, yeah. More than I go. I go like twice a year to a barber. That's if I even go I don't even go twice a year. I'm getting like unkempt. I'm starting like I don't care anymore. No, I do shave. That's the first sign. That's bad. Older guys who don't shave, that's it. That's like the loss of like self-respect. Watch out for your old man if he's in the house. He starts wearing like sweatpants and doesn't shave. That's intervention. Don't let him say to you he just wants to be natural now after all the years of working for a company. Don't let him get away with this. This next stop is like senility. The next thing you know is he'll put his pajamas on over his sweatsuit, and then he'll put a tuxedo on over his pajamas when you have to go to a wedding. You got to get him under control. Guys go out faster than the women, the mind, because if they work, they don't know what to do with themselves after they retire. What's the point of this retirement business? If I ever retired from anything, I'd be dead within 6 months. There's nothing out there. It's like there's like a blank world. I spent all day yesterday trying to enjoy myself, and I actually did. I loved it, doing nothing. I actually found that I could do nothing. That's the funny part. I found out that the naturalist in me still lives. I took the old camper. I have a 2006 Chevy camper van. Looks like new, like showroom. It's only got 20,000 miles on it. I bought it new. I rarely took it out, loaded it up with a picnic, like a Penguin cooler, whatever it's called, the little coolers. I haven't done that in years. You get a certain point of affluence, you don't do that anymore. You're not allowed to do that. It's like for the poor people. I filled up a picnic cooler for Teddy and I went down to a certain area I like, I won't tell you where, and I listened to the water coming in, and I walked around by the water, and I picnicked. Just for an hour or two. You know what? It was beautiful. Suddenly it was 1968 again. And I realized I could turn the clock back if I really wanted to. I could turn the clock back, and that's what I'm trying to say to you. Then at night I went to that Latin club for a couple of hours, and I heard the great Latin music. The band was astounding. You say, oh, nothing's as good as it was. This was so good. This is a local group of Latino guys. Well, there was some white guys in the back. One of them was a flautist and a trombone player. I never heard anything like this since the old days. The timbales player was as good as El Rey de Timbal. I'm telling you, it was so good watching everyone dance and enjoy themselves. It was, and then ethnically, I told you this before, it's an important point. As an older white guy, it's nice to go into a club that's mainly Latino and black guys and get along with everybody. What's the big deal? You see, because we live behind closed doors, the closed doors of our mind. And we start building up these barriers, like, oh, I go in there, it's not going to work. Everyone's going to hate me because I'm white. No one hated anyone. If they did, I wouldn't have known it. And it's a crowded floor, you brush against someone, excuse me, both ways. Everyone's polite. Nobody wants a problem when they're out to have a good time. And what I'm saying to you is it opens up your mind again to the world the way it really is, as opposed to the way the newspapers make it. Now, of course, there's areas you can't go into. I get that. Like all of San Francisco, in certain areas. The cops don't even go there. I'll be back in a minute.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or Swiss America. This is a world breaker. I mean, if you listen to this show from the beginning to now, it's the first show in 21 years where I've not taken a single call. Not one. Not one call. I don't know why. I don't know how it happened. The only call I was looking forward to I didn't get. It would have sounded something like this. Mike, I'm with the FBI. I can't, I'm behind the voice modulator, and Listen, drop that thing with Apple, will you please? Because the fact is they've already gone in the phone, and the calls were made right to DHS, but head of DHS was out with a migraine. Just let that go, will you, Mike? If you know what's good for you. Bye now. We didn't get that call. But here we are in the Savage Nation on the iPhones, the B phones, the C phones. I read a report today that people are buying what I have, a flip phone now. They're so tired of the iPhones connected to the internet, they want to be unconnected. I got a phone. I have an iPhone. I rarely use it. And then I have the old phone, the kind that the guys on Mulberry Street use in New York. I have an Italian friend. He laughed. He came in from New York. He said, "You still have one of those old phones, a flip phone?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "My friends all have 5 of them. We throw them away every day." Thank you. I didn't hear that one. But I use the phone not for any nefarious purposes. It gets reception in an elevator. And that's what do I need it for? To connect to the internet everywhere I am. Every second. I don't look at it. And I lose it all the time in my pocket. I have to call it to find out where it is. Then I ask the dog where he gets there. I get him nervous now about the cell phone. It's so small. Teddy, where's the phone? He gets nervous. He looks up. What do I know? Idiot, you're the person. What do you want from me? I was sleeping, having a good afternoon. What do you ask me about a cell phone for? You're supposed to be a dog. You're supposed to know these things. I don't know about phones. They don't smell. It doesn't smell like the back of another dog. Leave me alone. I'm tired. Go away. It's been the Savage Nation. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Come back tomorrow. Be here. Same